Hi, guys. Welcome back to Crime Time with Jess. So, today is the Menendez brothers hearing. We have no idea what's going to happen today. Okay. I was listening to Mark Garagos earlier on Good Morning America, and he was saying that the judge could just simply reaffirm that their hearing is on the 11th. Or the judge could go so far as to say, let's resentence them tomorrow. So, not really sure what's going to happen, but we're going to watch together. Let me pull this up. So they've been playing old videos. Oh, come up here then, silly pants. They've been playing old videos on NBC LA, which is what we're going to watch. The overwhelming majority of the comment section is very pro the brothers. A lot of people saying free them, free them, free them. Let me turn on the captions here. Subtitles. Yep. Okay.
I'm not going to reveal. That's his personal business. But let me tell you, it is about $25 an hour is how it works out.
Barry, will you stop working on this case?
Hi, M. Turner.
I have a moral commitment to see this through. And no, there's no question about my involvement in this case.
So you're on for the duration regardless.
Absolutely, to the very end.
Does anybody have a pro bono bankruptcy lawyer for Mr. Levin? It's outrageous. It's just typical of everything that's happened to criminal defendants in capital cases in this county in the last year. We were underfunded. Our experts weren't paid. People had to work for us for free because the county would not authorize payment for their services. And they came ahead and did it anyway because they were honorable and ethical and they knew we were on the side of the truth. And that should never have to happen to indigent defendants.
Have you been told that if there is a penalty phase, they will not pay through the penalty phase?
Well, he hasn't said. He's not paying him to prepare. He's off salary.
When were you told this?
This has been going on all week.
What is your reaction to the way this trial has gone now, as it has gone now?
This is the most bizarre trial I've ever participated in. I have never seen rulings such as we received in this trial. I have never seen a defense prohibited from putting on their witnesses and then prohibited from getting the instructions that are based on all the evidence that they have put on. It has been hell.
What kind of difference would have made in your case and the way the jury would have seen it if you could have put on?
I think they would have had actual witnesses in front of them corroborating my client, so they would have further reason to believe that everything he told them was the truth. And that's vital to corroborate a criminal defendant. And the heart of our case was cut out, and then the absolute heart and soul of it was removed when the judge refused to instruct on the very theory on which we tried the case this time and last time.
Are you saying then that the jury's decision is a foregone conclusion because the heart of your case has been cut out?
No, it's not a foregone conclusion, but if it comes out badly for us, I don't think that has anything to do with the truth.
Are you confident?
I'm not confident. I have no idea what's going to happen. I've never been in this position before where I was unable to actually put on my case and unable to get the instructions that under all the case authority apply. These decisions that were made that hurt us were made without a single case supporting them.
Leslie, what verdicts do you need to have a good appeal on the jury instruction?
I think any verdict will give us a good appeal on the jury instruction issue. I don't think because he cut out an entire line of defense. I don't think it will matter for the purpose of the appeal what, if anything, the jury comes back with.
Even if you get first?
Even if we get first, because we weren't able to put on imperfect self-defense.
What do you see as the big appellate issues? Single jury?
Oh, there's so many appellate issues. There's single jury. There's...
So hi, Mom. I think this starts very soon. It's supposed to be 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. I'm on Mountain time, so I think they're an hour ahead of me, and it's 9:34 here. So again, I think they're just showing old videos until the hearing starts. From my understanding, the brothers will not be physically in court. They're going to be virtually in court. So maybe we'll get a glimpse of them if that's what you're watching for. I'm really watching to see what happens, because it's just listening to that new DA Hockman, new DA elect. This man does not seem to want to let them out. I mean, the things that he said, something that really struck me that he said. They asked him, do you think that people voted for you essentially voting against the Menendez brothers, right? Because Gascon was all about letting them out. And he said, no. He said, I don't think people voted for me for anything to do with the Menendez brothers. He said, people voted for me for safety, which I've seen a lot of people in the comments say exactly that. I voted this guy in for safety. Gascon made us really unsafe. So him saying that, my constituents voted for me for safety. How is it going to look that this man releases 2 double murders? And they didn't just kill anybody. I mean, they killed their parents. That takes a special kind of something, okay? So I just don't think this would be a good look for him. And as many people that want to see them free, there's just as many people that don't think they should ever be free. So, this is very political stuff. I think Jose Menendez had it correct when he was trying to push Lyle into politics, because as you can see, everything comes down to politics, especially with stuff like this. But, I spent last night watching Lyle's entire cross-examination and really listening to every single thing that was said. What's striking is that in the first couple of minutes, I want to say like the first 2-3 minutes, he says it twice. I did not kill them because of the abuse. I didn't kill them because of the abuse, which is very conflicting because, I mean, that's the whole premise of why they did this, right? But he says, no, I didn't kill them because of the abuse. Because if he said that, if he said, yes, I did, I killed them because he was, molesting my little brother and he molested me and my mom knew and she didn't do anything, then it just would have been a vengeful act. But the defense that they were going for was the imperfect self-defense. So he had to keep saying, no, I didn't kill them because they abused me. I killed them because I was afraid of them, because they knew that I knew that they were still doing this, or my father was still doing this to my brother. And because my dad knew, we just assumed that he was going to kill us. So we killed them first. That's their defense. I mean, I don't mean to laugh at that, but that is what an imperfect defense is. So it's very conflicting listening to his testimony. When you listen to him with Jill Lansing, his attorney, hi, 99 Problems. When you listen to him with Jill Lansing, his attorney, there's a lot of emotion. They're talking all about the sexual abuse and all of that. But then when you watch him with the prosecutor, he's very composed. He's very calm. Lyle is very good on the stand. I'm just going to say it. He is very good on the stand as far as keeping his composure. But there wasn't a single tear. There wasn't any of that. There was no pausing in between questions. There was just straight up answers, and it wasn't even, he wasn't being combative with her. But it's very different watching him testify with his own lawyer and then testify with the prosecution. It's like, where did all that emotion go? But let's see what's going on here. I think we might be missing something.
Is allowed inside nor out of the courtroom once those verdicts are about to be announced. Then after those verdicts are announced, the jury is likely to be polled, each individual juror, to concur that that is in fact their decision. We will be here continuously to monitor the court activities and to bring you some information as soon as we get the verdicts from the courtroom of Judge Stanley Weisberg. Now back to the studio.
I feel bad for this poor guy. He's like back to the studio. They just still have him on. He's saying something now, but this is an old video. So I'm just reading this comment section, and it's going pretty slow at this point. But here's somebody: keep the two monsters in prison. Next person: Eric Menendez wrote to his cousin that his father was still essaying him. The two monsters are in hell. Leave them there. They knew better than to do all that. Well, are these comments starting to shift? Because when I was originally looking at this, there was a lot of free Lau Menendez and all that. I wonder why these subtitles aren't coming up. It's kind of pissing me off. Let me see. I was reading this comment earlier. 99 Problems. Jazz, how are you? Listening in while I work. Chat. Hi, Alley Cats. I'm good. And thank you for listening in. At 99 Problems, but crime ain't one. I love your name. I'm so on the fence with this case. Yeah, me too. I'm telling you, I go back and forth. When I watch them testify, I'm like, there's no way these guys could be lying about this, you know? And then I watch the detectives and other people that went to school with them, you know, classmates, describe how they really were in person. And you get a different picture, you know, because the defense really did paint them as just true blue victims. And, you know, the teacher got up on the stand and said Lyle had no friends. He was secluded off by himself. You know, I don't see why a teacher would lie about something like that. But then you have comments like this. And I screenshot this comment because this was in one of Lyle's cross-examination part 2 on Court TV. But this comment was in the comment section. This woman named Marianne, she said, I went to school with Lyle. Whether he knew it or not, he was just like his father. He never once gave me any inclination whatsoever that he was ever touched by his parents in a wrong way. For as all the other accusations they have made about their parents, I believe them. Their father was a bulldog, and a mistake was never allowed. I honestly believe they were treated like this pretty much their entire life. But as far as the molestation goes, I am so sorry. I did not believe one word of it. Here at our high school in Calabasas, he was known as the big bully on the block. Trust me, quite a few of us were glad when they moved over to Beverly Hills, but were so disgusted what he did to his parents. The right decision was not to pull the trigger, but to just walk away instead. So you have people, you know, people that are molested don't have to give you an inclination that they were molested. You know what I mean? You may never know. So that part that she said that, I was like, When she started talking about him being a bully, I didn't know he had that reputation. It's weird. I mean, you'll see people in comment sections say, hey, you know, I did this with this person. Sometimes they're lying, but a lot of times, you know, people are behind an anonymous avatar and they just feel safe to make their comments. So 99 Problems is saying, let's see, but I'm so not sure. And I'm with you on your analysis on what you say, as it can support and yet deny their claims at the same time. Good morning, Colleen. Yes, exactly. I feel like it could go either way, you know. This is where I'm at currently, because it's subject to change, you know. But currently, I do believe that Jose was a complete tyrant. I do think there was some sexual abuse with him. I do. But with Kitty, and it's not because she's a woman, don't come for me with that crap, okay? I'm very well aware that women can do some very disgusting things, all right? But that's not why. It's just there's zero evidence to Kitty doing anything sexual to either of them, or that she knew, or all of this. What I think at this moment is that Jose was a tyrant, not just to the boys, but to Kitty as well. Because when I was watching Lyle being cross-examined, they were talking about his mother. And the prosecutor said, your mother took orders from your father. And Lyle said yes to the T. And the prosecutor said, so if you didn't do well, that means it was taken out on your mother. And he said yes. So, I think Jose was abusive to all of them. And I think when he had an affair, he had several alleged affairs, and he also beat the crap out of Kitty. I think we're looking at a very broken woman. And that's where the brothers run into a problem, because they have a defense with killing their dad. I mean, again, Jose was so bad that, the prosecutor could not find a single character witness to put on the stand for him. So, but as far as Kitty goes, I think what the boys, what they've described, and I need to stop calling them boys, what the brothers described was just a very broken woman, that she was very depressed, that she was drinking a lot, she was taking pills, she was having meltdowns and flipping out and stuff like that. I think that she was going through something they could not possibly understand. Lyle himself says that his dad would tell him to just ignore her. Just ignore her. She's crazy, and so Lyle would just ignore her. And I thought something that was interesting, Pam, the prosecutor for the first trial, the one that's on their documentary that's on Netflix right now, she says, you want to know why? She's so abrasive, okay? The way she talks is crazy abrasive. But she goes, you want to know why I agreed to do this documentary? I agreed to do this documentary for that woman that had those two kids and that was a doormat to her husband and her sons, and then got mowed down in her living room like a wild animal. And the way she said it, she's so brash. But I really do wonder a lot about Kitty, because that is where they always have trouble defending themselves. They always have trouble, they can say easily why they killed their dad. But I think they had a lot of trouble in coming up with a good reason of why they slaughtered their mom as well. They told Dr. Oziel it was because she was so weak-minded and pathetic that, she really couldn't live without their dad. So it was kind of like a mercy kill. And also she would be a witness, And not only that, if they didn't kill her, she would have got the money. Not them. I'm just saying. Let's see what's going on here.
You have a prepaid call from an inmate at the Mule Creek State Prison.
Let's listen to
Locked
this.
away since he was 28, Lyle Menendez agrees to a rare interview.
Just sort of an explosion of emotion at that time.
But Menendez says in the summer of 1989 on North Elm Drive in Beverly Hills, he and his brother had no choice.
This was not a calculated planned murder.
No, this was a premeditated murder. Eric and Lyle Menendez are cold-blooded murderers.
Beverly Hills police detective Les Zoller was the lead detective in the Menendez murders.
This was probably the worst crime scene I had ever seen.
As horrific as the crime scene ended up being, it's that horrific, the emotions that are flooding your brain.
Zoller is behind the police tape on North Elm Drive when just hours after the shotgun slayings, the brothers return. Lyle asks Zoller if he can get some things from the house.
I said, well, what would you like to get? He said, well, I'd like to get our tennis equipment.
Did any of this seem unusual to you?
Oh, was very unusual for me. His main concern was going into the murder scene to get tennis equipment from there.
Were you two people that thought we got away with this?
I was expecting to be arrested, but I was really just going day to day afterwards. I mean, my brother and I had it's like crawling away from a helicopter crash.
In the following weeks, more behavior Zoller considers unusual.
We had learned that they were spending money like it was water.
And then the discovery of Eric Menendez's taped confession leads to the brothers' arrests. For 6 months, millions of viewers riveted by gavel-to-gavel coverage.
These defendants have lied throughout. They are lying now.
The tearful testimony of Lyle Menendez becomes the defining moment of the trial as he recounts in detail being molested by his father.
He raped me.
It is a big fairy tale.
The defense now anchored on claims of sexual and psychological abuse.
I believe that Eric and Lyle Menendez were molested.
Robert Rand is the first journalist to interview Eric and Lyle after the killings.
Lyle said he threatened to go to the police and reveal that Jose Menendez was still molesting his brother Eric. And Jose Menendez, according to the brother's testimony, said, "I'm never going to let that happen." They were afraid that their parents were going to kill them.
It was unspeakable what I was feeling as I was growing up in this home. I think it just poured out that weekend when I realized that this had been happening to my brother for so long. My mother knew what had happened to me and made a series of choices, choosing her husband over her children. There was no separating my mother from my father at that point.
Why didn't you and Eric just leave the house?
Because it's difficult. I look back and there are times when I say I'd give anything to just grab my brother, force him in the car, leave the house, hope for the best.
Instead, the brothers opened fire on their parents.
They murdered the best witnesses that we have.
Lyle Menendez, now 49, incarcerated near Sacramento. His 46-year-old brother Eric, 500 miles away in a San Diego prison. Convicted murderers with no chance of parole.
I mean, you cannot vigilante take justice in your own hands, no matter how horrendous what happened might have been.
The brothers who killed their parents together would be separated in the middle of the night just after they were sentenced and taken to opposite ends of the state. They never said goodbye. They have never come face to face since. I'm Robert Kavasik. You'll be hearing more from Lyle Menendez in the coming weeks right here on NBC4.
28 years later, a taped confession remains at the center of the Menendez murder case. Tormented and depressed, Eric Menendez revealed to a therapist that he and his brother killed their parents. Tonight, we have the recording that would ultimately send the brothers to prison. And hear from Lyle Menendez today on this critical piece of evidence.
What happened? I killed my parents.
I've heard of very few murders that were more savage than this one was.
It was multiple shotgun blasts, 5 with Jose and 8 for Kitty. That's an angry circumstance where they were shot.
Beverly Hills Police Detective Les Zoller says investigators found no weapon, no shell casings, no motive.
Well, the break of the case was a woman by the name of Judalon Smith. She was the girlfriend, mistress of Dr. Oziel.
Dr. Jerome Oziel was a married psychologist who had been treating Eric Menendez. Days after the affair with Oziel ended, Smith went to the cops.
I wanted some advice on how she can make a complaint against Dr. Oziel. And she said that I have information about the Menendez brothers.
Smith told police Oziel had a recording of the brothers confessing to their parents' murder.
My next step was to get those audio tapes.
What you're about to hear are excerpts from those tapes played as evidence during the trial.
There was no way I was going to make a decision to kill my mother without Eric's consent.
After the murders, Eric Menendez went to Oziel for therapy. He was struggling with guilt and was suicidal.
I almost had no choice to do what I did, and I hate myself for doing it.
NBC4 reviewed the hour-long recording. On it, the brothers speak extensively about their mother's despair over her husband's extramarital affairs and her suicide attempts.
I did what I thought my mother would want me to do, which is please kill me.
But for the lead detective on the...
Did you hear that? Did you just hear that? That was the Oziel tapes. I did what I thought my mother would want me to do. Please just kill me. Again, it's like they thought, oh, we're going to do a mercy kill on her. We're just going to put her down like a dog. So that's why you didn't hear about none of this sexual abuse with the mother, with Kitty, prior to the trial. And I heard it several times in Lyle's testimony, where he would say, my father would do this, and then he would like throw in at the end, and my mother too, and my mom too. But again, I just don't feel like they had a good enough reason, my opinion, to kill her, and they had to come up with something. I don't believe the allegations against her. I believe they are saying, oh, she had these she was unstable. She was unstable because she was dealing with a psychopath of a husband that did all of this stuff to all of them. Their Aunt Joan, who heavily supports the brothers getting out, has said, that the brothers, kept trying to talk their mother into leaving with them and leaving Jose. And she just couldn't do it. But they wanted her to get away from him. So, and I think it's telling too that in their documentary that just came out, Eric says, I really, really miss my mom. Like, I really wish I could just talk to my mom and give her a hug and tell her it's all going to be okay. So I think she was as much a victim as Jose as they were. But again, they had watched their father beat their mother. They had this tyrant of a father telling them just ignore her. You imagine your mother really having a meltdown and your father's inflicting all this emotional pain on her and all of this stuff. And she's just crying and having a meltdown. You just walk past her, just ignore her because that's what your dad said to do. She's unstable. I think Kitty has gotten a really bad rap. And I think there's some things that she did that are questionable. Like with Lyle and Eric's female cousin testifying and saying that Lyle had said him and his dad touched each other in the genital area. And she told her Aunt Kitty. And Kitty, took him by the arm. And I guess she didn't take this seriously or didn't believe that that's what it was or something. I don't know. It's just, I think Jose broke her in the way that he broke them. And I think they love their mom, and I think they felt sorry for her because I think they saw, obviously, how their father was. But at the same time, they didn't have the respect for their mom that they should have. They were not raised that way. They were not raised to really have respect for her. Jose didn't. Actually, Lyle talks a lot about how, Kitty didn't have any power. But at the end of the relationship, he said things changed. Before they killed them, that things had changed. And he said, I don't know what my mom had on my dad, or I don't know why, but she suddenly had all this power and she was like calling the shots. So, there was a power switch. Who knows what Kitty knew? I don't know. Who knows why Jose decided to do that? Lyle talked about, when he was younger, around 10 or so, that his dad's attitude was more, screw this family. If I have to, I'll leave this family behind to go start a new one. But he said as he got older, his dad changed into more that he wanted that family unit of Kitty and the brothers and him to all stay together for image. So sounds like Jose got a little wiser, I guess. But, let's get back to listening to this. I'm going to have to get up here for a second.
to being penniless.
So I've written articles.
Journalist Robert Rand was working on a profile piece on the entertainment executive at the time of the shotgun murders in Beverly Hills. He says Jose Menendez vowed to be a hero for his people
and run for the U.S. Senate because Jose Menendez had a dream to liberate Cuba and oust Fidel Castro.
After marrying a beauty queen, having 2 sons, and moving across the country, Menendez would find fame and fortune in show business.
Jose was quite the corporate bureaucrat, and no friendship stood in the way of that.
Peter Hoffman was Jose Menendez's boss at Carol Co. Pictures.
It was quite a substantial enterprise was built, and Jose had a lot to do with that.
Menendez started his corporate climb in New York City. As an exec for RCA, it was Menendez who brought the boy band Menudo to English audiences, a group that would later launch the career of singer Ricky Martin.
There were a lot of people that worked with Jose Menendez that were afraid
of a video distribution company when he was killed. Hoffman remembers that Monday morning phone call.
He told me Jose's been murdered. I said, murdered? How do you process that? You know,
their business together would soon become the target of speculation.
There were a lot of stories saying that this had been a mafia hit and that it was somehow related to the business of Carol Pictures and the business of live entertainment.
One of those companies had taken a $20 million life insurance policy out on Menendez, a policy his business partner says the brothers knew about.
Boy, they were after us about the money right afterwards. They wanted that $20 million.
This family was a nightmare.
Dr. William Vickery, a forensic psychiatrist, was tasked with basically reading the minds of the Menendez brothers after they killed their parents.
Both of them had been sexually molested by their father, threatened numerous times by their father that if they crossed certain lines, he would beat them so badly that they would never forget it or even kill them.
But Menendez's business partner, while he says he knew of the father's various affairs, disputes the claims he sexually abused his sons.
Complete nonsense. It's just inconceivable that Jose, however difficult a guy he was, there was nothing like that at all.
And while Beverly Hills police never found evidence of abuse, Dr. Vickery says he has no doubt.
The horror that was going on in this family was real.
So what happened to that $20 million? Well, $15 million was part of a key man insurance policy, which companies take out on employees who are key to their success. So that money was never intended for the family. As for the remaining $5 million, it would have gone to the family, but Jose never took the required physical.
A chilling finale tonight to Law & Order's true crime, the Menendez murders. Eric and Lyle Menendez testified that after a lifetime of abuse, they believed their parents, Jose and Kitty, were going to kill them. Well, tonight, family members share new family secrets and details of what they witnessed. For the first time, NBC4's Robert Kovacic asked Kitty's sister if Kitty was capable of murder.
If you tell anyone, I will kill you.
It's difficult, and it's very true.
You're making things up, Diane.
They have watched the Law & Order true crime series of what allegedly happened inside a Beverly Hills mansion.
Finally, they're starting to talk about the truth.
Now, 2 cousins and an aunt of Lyle and Eric Menendez tell NBC4 the show merely scratched the surface.
I don't think it's as horrific as what it really was. You need to pay attention to your kids. I'm sorry. My sister could have protected her kids. That was her job.
Joan Vandermolen says her little sister was a vivacious girl from the Midwest who married a monster.
I want the world to know what this man was like.
The Beverly Hills Police Department says there was no concrete evidence of sexual abuse on North Elm Drive, but the Andersons are convinced the red flags were there.
Their bedrooms were upstairs. Whenever Jose was with one of his boys, especially Eric, you were not allowed to go onto that floor. No one, including Kitty. We didn't question Jose. He was so domineering.
This photo of Eric and cousin Karen taken only weeks before the murders. Alone with him in the backyard, she remembers he was unusually quiet.
Looked like he was going to look at me and say something, and then he wouldn't.
Just accepted to UCLA, Eric had apparently been told by his father he could live on campus, but would have to spend several nights a week at home.
Kitty and Jose were sitting on the couch where they always sat. And as soon as we got in that house, boy, they wanted to know, what did you talk about? And just grilled me.
Years before this incident, dramatized in one episode, Diane will never forget.
Me and Dad touch each other down there.
Lyle told me in 1976 that he and his dad had been touching each other. I went to get Kitty upstairs, and then she came directly back downstairs, and she took him by the arm and never said another word about it.
Do you believe that your sister molested her sons?
My first inclination is to say, no, I don't believe she did. Then I think, but how could I believe that she did all this other stuff and she let them be beaten and abused?
When they learned Kitty and Jose were murdered, none of them suspected Lyle and Eric.
Not for a minute.
Not once.
However, these three women have no doubt the brothers feared for their lives.
All they knew was the gut instinct of an animal about to be killed.
But was Kitty Menendez actually capable of killing her own children? Her sister believes Kitty's husband, Jose, always came first.
She wouldn't have stopped him.
Is there forgiveness?
Not yet.
No, I can't. For what she did to those, allowed to happen to those kids.
Do you forgive Lyle and Eric Menendez for what they did?
Yes, absolutely.
Not everyone in Kitty's family was sympathetic to Eric and Lyle. Kitty's brothers testified for the prosecution. In the final moments of tonight's Law and Order episode, there's a revelation that Jose Menendez sexually abused as a child. From his cell in Northern California, Lyle Menendez responded to that allegation.
I don't think it's an excuse, and that doesn't help me understand the brutality of my father in any way.
And Lyle went on to say that he's heard from thousands of adults who were sexually abused but did not molest their own children.
Over the years, we've heard very little from Eric Menendez since he was found guilty of murdering his parents. After a very public trial, he now leads a very private life in prison. Tonight, for the first time, we're hearing about Eric's life today from an unlikely friend, a juror turned confidant.
I don't care what people feel. I know what it is, and I know it's real.
Betty Oldfield, nearly 90, a grandmother and dedicated community volunteer, and best friends with Eric Menendez, one of California's most notorious inmates.
Eric and I have adopted one another. He has a new mother, I have a new son.
Their friendship began when Betty was an alternate juror on Eric's first murder trial, which ended with a hung jury. In an unusual move, defense attorney Leslie Abramson invited sympathetic jurors to a dinner.
And had arranged for Eric to call from the jail.
Eric wanted to thank the jurors who believed the brothers.
You could see when they testified, the expressions, the tears, they were damaged.
He did what he wanted to me, and I couldn't stop that. And I wanted to, but I couldn't.
For 5 months, Betty listened to details of the violent shooting.
All I was thinking is, I gotta fire every shot of my gun.
And graphic allegations of sexual abuse by his father.
I said, Dad, please stop. And I said, Dad, you're hurting me. At one point, I just started screaming.
Detectives have said they found no evidence of abuse. And yet, you're convinced there was abuse.
I'm convinced that Eric tells the truth. Always.
Betty believes the brothers were driven to murder.
Their childhood was unbelievable. Growing up in a war zone, he has turned his life around so completely.
Over the past 23 years, Betty has received hundreds of letters from Eric.
I've kept everything he's ever sent me.
And Betty brags about his achievements like a proud parent.
He has championed causes for the elderly, disabled, and ADA inmates.
These days, she gets calls from the convicted killer 2 to 3 times a week. But there is one thing Betty and Eric never talk about.
The events in his life leading up to the murders. It's painful for him.
She tries to be of comfort and recounts a call from Eric on the anniversary of the shootings.
He called me and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And you know, you would like to say, hey, it's going to be all right. You'll be fine. You can't say that. No, there was nothing I could say. Just listen to him.
Standing in her kitchen looking over Eric's letters, she says this friendship is very fulfilling.
Brings me great joy.
While she is reluctant to share the personal contents of the correspondence, she points to the way Eric signs off as evidence of his softer side and their genuine bond.
You are my angel on earth. Truly so. Love, Eric.
You know, I'm always going to question people that reach out to murderers and befriend them, and they find this very fulfilling. I would have to say, I'm just going to guess there's something very lacking in your life. I reached out to a murderer, James Brenner, but it was to understand why the hell he killed someone. I didn't want to be friends. But either way, I was looking at something last night because, they're talking about how much of a model prisoner Eric is. Let's say that they go up for resentencing and they've served enough time, and so they're immediately available for parole, right? The parole board in California, I don't know what you guys think happens. Like if someone like Susan Smith just goes and sits down in front of parole board and cries their eyes out, and the parole just decides yes or no. No, that's not what it is. They kind of have a checklist and they got to go off of that checklist. So for California, they look at behavior, the inmate's behavior in prison, and whether it indicates an ability to function within the law. Now, the last live stream I did, I said, Eric hasn't done anything that we know of. Well, I found out he's gotten into several fights in jail. Nothing major, but it's just stuff that the parole board can look at. What I'm thinking of that was a long time ago for Eric. I'm thinking of now and Lyle and his contraband cell phones, corresponding with his 21-year-old mistress. Is that going to look good to a parole board that he got caught with a contraband cell phone, and then even after getting caught with that, he gets another one, and the Daily Mail is just dry snitching on people out in the open? The Daily Mail put it in there that he actually has a second phone. So my cat is just eating my toes. Stop, Oliver. He's a little maniac. So anyway, next one that they look for is remorse. Whether the inmate shows genuine remorse and understands the impact of their actions on the victim and society. I do think that especially Eric has shown tremendous remorse. They're both very good talkers. They have a way of conveying how they feel and what they're thinking. So I think they have shown remorse. That's a little check in their box. The next one is plans. Whether the inmate has realistic plans for release, including where they will live and how they will support themselves. Now, according to Mark Garagos, their lawyer, they have an extensive plan for them if they are released. And I do wonder how it works because Tammy lives in Nevada. She doesn't live in California. So would he be able to parole to her house and leave the state of California? I don't know. I want to say I don't think so, but I really don't know that. I don't know if Tammy would have to move to California. I really don't know. And then they go by social history, whether the inmate has a stable social history and a supportive network of family or friends. They clearly do have a very supportive network of family and friends. They had 24 people show up with 6 hours notice to a press conference a couple months ago. So they have an extensive network of family. Then they go by their criminal history. Okay. So whether or not the inmate has a lack of a juvenile record or significant history of violent crime. Well, they do have a history of violent crime. I mean, they committed a double murder. Now, if you guys remember, Eric and Lyle went on a whole robbing spree around town, just stealing people's things that they did not need, stealing tens of thousands of dollars and valuables and all kinds of stuff. And Jose bailed them out of that. He paid their way out of it, which I kind of think was a bad parenting move. You probably should have let them have some type of punishment with that so they learned something. But, I mean, you see what kind of parent he was. So, and also, if memory serves, I don't quote me on this, but I believe that Jose had Eric take some accountability because he was the juvenile. He was underage, and he didn't want Lyle to have a record. Plus, Lyle was like his golden child, you know. And then age. They look at your age. Whether the inmate's age reduces the probability of recidivism. And I would say their age in this incident is going to work in their favor. I mean, Lyle's 56, almost 57, and Eric is 51. 53, I'm sorry. So, and then they go into motivation. This is going to be a big one. The motivation for the crime. This is one of the things on the checklist for the California Parole Board. You know, I mean, I think it's really going to come down to what they believe, because the brothers still maintain, you know, that it wasn't because of the abuse. It was because they were afraid for their lives. Because Lyle had confronted his father, told his father that he was not going to touch his brother anymore. And now that this secret was a big old, you know, it was out in the open to the family, the brothers alleged that the parents were going to kill them. And so they went and bought shotguns and killed them instead. The prosecution has always maintained that it was for greed and for money. So I guess it depends on what the parole board believes of what the motivation for the crime was. And then the last one is victimization. So whether the inmate suffered from intimate partner battery or was victimized in some other way. Now, Leslie Aberson, Eric's lawyer in the first trial, both the brothers' lawyer in the second trial. Leslie pretty much said that they had like battered spouse syndrome, you know. So again, it's going to come down to what this parole board believes. If they were, you know, victimized heavily by Jose, that's what's alleged, and Kitty, or if it was some victimization but didn't warrant murder. So there's definitely things, you know, that they have to look at and evaluate and come to determination. And I think it's going to be rough for them with the Menendez brothers because it's such a crazy case. I mean, I see a lot of people say they're on the fence. I am too. Some days I'm like, boy, they should not be let out. And then other days I'm like, you know what? All their behavior just makes sense with the abuse. So I just go back and forth with it, you know. I could just see both things being true. So let's go back and listen to what's going on this.
Family?
I can't say that. My dad left home when Kitty was 3 years old, but he came back repeatedly.
He came back because
Came back to see my mom for sex. When I was 18, I got married at 17. And I didn't know that for the next 20. Kitty told me late after I was in Arizona, she said, well, this is what's been going on. And that had to affect her too.
Sure.
And my brother was 4 years old. Kitty was 3. My brother that just passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
And my dad took him from my mother under false pretenses. He had gotten in some kid trouble at 7 years old, and my dad told my mom that the police said, if you don't let me take him, he's going to go to a reform school. Well, she didn't want that to happen, so she let my dad take him. But that wasn't true. That never really happened. So he ran away from my dad when he was 16. So, and he abused my other brother, Milton, who was 11 when he left home. But Milton was abused by my dad.
Physically beaten?
Physically, he was abused, and emotionally. Milton ever wanted my dad's approval, and he did it. He was Special Forces, Green Beret. He did everything.
But he also ended up being
He
an
ended up
abusive
being an
man.
abuser to his family, seriously abusing. And so it just goes on.
It's a cycle.
So it was hardly a happy
And-
Midwestern family.
And when
Was Kitty damaged by this? I mean, as she moved forward, did she have bouts of depression then? Was there any issues? Was she, by all intents and purposes, what we've read is that she was just this very vivacious, pretty
She
young
could do
woman.
anything. She was strong. She painted my mom's house. She could make clothes. She could make cover furniture. She was, and she was strong. But, I think after she met Jose, and she had gone to college for communication and television work and everything, and planned to work in the field. And after she got married and had Lyle, Jose let her know that she wasn't going to go to work doing that. So I'm sure that her life's ambition went out the window and she was relegated.
But she always had a harsh ambition and the Anderson need to have everything look good. And
yeah,
I remember before we moved from Chicago, things that she said to me that I felt were very harsh and too harsh for my age.
Like appearances matter.
Appearances matter. And one day she was on the roof putting shingles on the roof at Grandma's house. And I had this new outfit on and I was 6 years old and somebody had told me it looked cute on me. So I went in the backyard and we all looked up to Aunt Kitty. She was vivacious. She had a laugh like Diane's. Diane's laugh is quite a bit like Aunt Kitty's. And you would just, hear it and, oh, Aunt Kitty. And it would just draw you to her. But I went in the backyard and I said, oh, look, I have this cute outfit on. And she came down off the roof, off the ladder to yell at me, tell me that you don't compliment yourself. And just crushed my spirit. So, that epitomized to me how my behavior was with her after that.
Going along with what my mom was saying, as far as her ambitions for television and being a cameraman, and she had her own radio program on campus while she was in college.
Mm-hmm.
Her dream was to go into Broadway and theater, and she still, in 1976, she was still very vibrant and still believed that could happen for her. And over the years, that disappeared, and she was very resentful for it, that she was not able to pursue her career. One time I was helping her make a bed, and this was in 1982, and her bed, and the kids were just off to the side of us, and I started talking about having kids. She stopped me cold and said, no, never have children. They only serve to drive a wedge between a man and his wife.
Ouch. That is harsh to hear. That's harsh to hear. What I hear is a woman that had ambitions, that had a drive and passions, and was told by her husband, those are dead. You're a mom now. And she let that resentment eat her life. And I think it did probably extend to her children in some fashion. It sounds like Kitty was just overall miserable. And that's sad. I find that very sad.
As girls?
Yeah.
He was very intimidating.
Yeah.
Very intimidating. And he would laugh you out of a conversation if he could. Belittling. Very belittling.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was,
And that would,
he could
especially
humiliate.
true. He did it to both his children and to adults. But he really was hard on Eric, as far as belittling him and laughing at him.
Especially on the tennis court during practices and tournaments that I saw.
Everything.
I think he was that way with everybody. At one of the memorial services in Princeton, one of his I don't say co-workers, nobody was a co-worker, but worked under him, got talking to me. A couple of guys did, and said he would. I mean, this was a memorial service. People were sorry that this had happened, but he took the time to tell me that he would call me meetings and point out to one guy and say, "Watch him. Watch what I'm going to do to him. He'll be weeping before he leaves."
As the marriage continued and the boys were born, was it happy times in the beginning? Was the household ever a joyous place to be?
My mother would go to visit regularly, and she came back because they were doing well financially, and the boys were doing well with their tennis, but nobody knew what was beneath the surface.
I don't remember that ever being like, we grew up middle class. We didn't have extra this or that. But there was a lot of laughing going on in our house, and I don't remember that kind of thing being in my memory whenever they would visit, or it was always
That's
very
true.
tense. It was very regimented. It was much different than what I was used to, and always a sense that something was wrong. I always had that sense about them.
You know, I've got myself and my sister-in-law and a former daughter-in-law. We all had the same experiences with that family. After Eric would have a tennis match, and they were staying at a local hotel in Scottsdale. And this is so identical and telling it that Jose would go into Eric always had his own room. And Jose would go into that room, and he'd be there at least an hour, and we would be waiting in the master suite, and Jose would come out finally, and he'd say, "Well, let's go to dinner. Eric doesn't feel like eating, or Eric isn't hungry." But I said that, and my sister-in-law told me that, and my former daughter-in-law told me the same story, and she thought it was unique to her. So I thought,
It was a rule. Whenever Jose was with one of his boys, especially Eric, you were not allowed to go onto that floor. Their bedrooms were upstairs, and then there was the main floor and then a basement. And if Jose was upstairs with Eric, no one, including Kitty, was allowed to go even up to the floor. We had to wait until Jose came back downstairs. And more often than not, he would say, "Eric doesn't feel well right now. He'll come down later." How many times does a kid not feel well?
Did something go through your mind at that point that something was going on, or was just out of the realm of possibility?
At the time, and I don't think that anybody did. We didn't question Jose.
I began to, though, as I got older, and when they had moved to California, I had hoped that I could become close to Kitty again, because with them living on the East Coast, I didn't get to see them as often. So I would come over and visit once in a while, short visits, never anything like Diane did. And something was not right. And I had been in an abusive marriage. And some of the behaviors that were going on in that house were things that just raised red flags and made my stomach go into knots, and just wasn't right. And
An example, Karen. Tell me something that you've noticed.
just like Diane said, after the meals, Eric would disappear up into his room, or he would go off with Jose, and they would just have these quiet talks that were very tense, and I would start to go that way, and Kitty would say, "No, you need to leave them alone." And it would be just very awkward, and they'd come back, and Eric would just seem browbeat and sad. And I would try my damnedest to get Kitty and Eric to talk to me on all those visits, and they wouldn't say anything. Turned out that my gut instincts were correct, and I think that's, as like Mom said earlier, You know, my whole intent in speaking out, all these years, I just keep thinking if I had pushed them a little harder, if I had asked the right question or asked it in a different way or asked it when Jose wasn't in the house or, you know, just what could I have done to have gotten them to speak up and tell me what was going on? And I don't know what I would have done, but I would have done something. And I feel so strongly about wanting people to pay attention if they think something's going on. Push it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. But if you're right, you might save a situation like this.
Did you get the sense that when that Lyle or Eric ever wanted to say something to you?
I did.
Did they ever come close?
I think Eric came close one day in the backyard after I had.
Okay, well, coming close isn't good enough, but what I was going to say is I thought this was starting very soon, but as you can see, it has not. So I'm going to look up again the time, and I thought it would be starting now. This is Joan and her two daughters. Joan is Kitty's sister. This is her oldest daughter. This is her youngest daughter. The youngest daughter had more, like playtime and stuff like that. She went and stayed at the house for like summer vacation. She would go stay for a month and stuff like that. So this woman here had a lot of up close interactions with them. I really do feel for the family. I mean, it's got to be an awful spot to be in. Your one family member you loved is murdered by one of her children. I mean, that's just wild to have to deal with and speak up for. And I also think it's weird that both of Kitty's sisters wanted the brothers free and both of her brothers did not. One of her brothers is dead now. The other one's still alive, Milton. And he is very anti them getting out. And it was like that for the juries. The women in the first trial, when they had two hung juries, because each brother had a jury, and they both came back hung, but all the women, wanted like manslaughter, and all the men wanted them to have, a murder charge. So it's very split by gender, whatever that means. The guys just are not buying this, or I'm not sure.
And he had already gotten in the bed in the meantime. And she took him by the arm and just took him right back upstairs and never said another word about it.
He told you, showed you? Tell me again exactly what he had said to you.
I'm not sure. Can I sleep in this bed? My dad and I have been touching each other down there.
And what was your...
Well, I couldn't believe it. And then after Kitty reacted the way she did, I thought I was making more of it than it really was. And just to find out that I didn't understand it enough, how bad it was. And I guess Lyle told his mom after that, he told her directly himself. And nothing was ever done. Although I do, from the trial, I understand that it did stop shortly after that time for him. But then
I want to ask you guys, what do you think is going to happen today? Do you think the judge is just going to say, yeah, see you on the 11th, sentence is confirmed? Do you think there's going to be anything significant, I guess, that comes from this hearing? I don't think so. That's my prediction, but you never know. But what do you guys think? Do you think the judge is going to do something weird? What do you think? Because anything could really happen. Could be a giant nothing burger, or there could be something very interesting happen today. I'm not sure.
Was she on pills? Was there
She had started
alcohol?
to drink more. Yes, there were specific
She was
drinks,
taking
and she was taking.
sedatives.
She was,
and-
yeah, she
You
was
said
taking
in the morning?
Yeah, it would be. She would put it in her coffee in the morning, even, and she was drinking more and more. And there had just been a really drastic change. And I asked Sylvia, who is the oldest daughter of Terry and Carlos Peralt, one night we went for a walk, and I shared with her how much Kitty had changed. And the only thing she said she could think of was that in the interim between my visits, Kitty had found out that Jose was having an affair. I believe it was with his secretary, that one. And he went on to have several other affairs throughout their marriage.
She really loved her husband. Was she afraid of her husband? Was she intimidated by her husband, or was she just madly in love with him and his
I
world?
think that she was afraid of her future.
Well
I
said.
think she was raised to believe by my mother that she was going to marry well, get educated, and know her trade, marry well.
That's very important to the
It was very
Anderson
important,
family.
very important. And when this came tumbling down, I'm sure that this was all she thought of all her life, which is this is what's going to happen, because she was told and she believed it.
She asked me one time when we were on our way home, it was just two of us in the car, how I was coping with having broken up with my ex-boyfriend at the time. And I said, okay. And then she shared with me, well, I was going to marry this other man, and then I ended up marrying Jose. And I guess I made the right choice because look how much money Jose makes. That was her reason for being in the marriage.
She had.
Dang, they're just slaughtering Kitty, aren't they? I hate that this. I was just reading their little description of this video, and it says, "Watch live Menendez brothers to make court appearance today." And then it says, when Lyle and Eric Menendez attend a court hearing virtually this morning, the brothers will be seen and possibly heard from for the first time in decades. That is not true. They literally have a documentary that just came out. It was filmed in 2023. They're both on there, definitely talking and all of that. So I don't know why it's always like that. Oh, they're going to be heard for the first time. No, they've been heard from a lot. I mean, Eric's wife has a YouTube and a X page. Lyle's wife, I guess, is still running his. I don't know why his mistress hasn't taken over those duties yet, but
She would sacrifice her children for her husband.
That's why that was my point. That's what I was trying to get at. No mother should do that, no matter what. You're there to protect your kids.
She resented them terribly.
She was a different woman.
She didn't know how. Apparently,
from when I was a little girl and we moved with Diane in the back seat of the car from Chicago.
She was in a porta crib in the back seat, and Kitty rode side with.
People didn't even use seatbelts then. But she was always a tough woman. Tough woman. But
she was remarkable.
A different woman.
Was she ever a good mom?
No, I don't think so.
Were the boys part of the the perfect family that you're supposed to have that was creating that?
The facade. It was a great
They
facade.
weren't allowed to have friends.
The only person that ever came over besides me or Alan, who visited, was
Cousin Alan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Andy Cano, Marta's son, her youngest son, He was friends with Eric. They were
Right.
very close. And unfortunately, Andy has passed. But when she was pregnant with Lyle, she didn't want him and told her friends that she did. Her plan was to give Lyle to her best friends and have them raise him, and she would visit him on the weekends on her way up for ski trips.
And I remember that.
That was her
I don't know if you ever
original
knew
plan.
that.
She told people that she didn't want her baby.
But it was that that Jose wanted children. Was that as well important because she went on to have another one?
Right.
The show portrays your aunt, your sister, as really nothing short of a monster. I mean, how would you describe her? I mean, had she become, had something really taken over her and she had become this person that really had...
I think Diane's describing how she would have these rages.
Did she physically hit her children?
I don't remember her doing it in front of me. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but there were so many things that were going on. And over the years, I've kind of forgotten about some of this stuff.
And some of that raging, when you do that to a young child, is just as bad as them being physically
The
hit.
verbal abuse can be just
Yes.
if not worse.
And it was just rampant in that house. Even when I went to the house in California, I made what I thought was a really nice dinner for them, put it on the table, and Jose just belittled it every step of the way, threw it at the sink, and it was just like yelling at the boys that they shouldn't eat this kind of food. And, I mean, it was really bad, and that was like my third visit out there. And
It was 89.
yeah, and I had visited at the Calabasas home and witnessed him on the phone with people he was doing business dealings with, and I have never heard people talk on the phone like that before. I was just shocked, and I thought, well, I guess that's what people do when they work in the movie industry. They talk like that to other people.
That's a hard one for me. But I think at first, my first inclination is to say, no, I don't believe she did. Then I think, but how could I believe that she did all this other stuff and she let them be beaten and abused in other ways? So
It's hard for
my
you
jury,
because
my
you
jury's
don't
out.
think.
You don't.
At the
I know
same
how I
time-
was raised, and my mother's daughter wouldn't think of doing something like that. But perhaps with as bad as things got in that household, it's hard to say it didn't happen.
Didn't she just say that her mother taught Kitty to be the way she was? Now she's saying, my mother's daughter wouldn't do such a thing. I don't know. I could have swore I just heard her saying that. So I'm looking at this CNN article about this. And it's saying the brothers currently incarcerated in California are expected to appear virtually for the status hearing scheduled to start at 10:30 a.m. local time. Well, if local time means Eastern Standard Time, it's not on the East Coast. I don't know if they mean 10:30 a.m. their local time or 10:30 a.m. California local time. Hasn't started yet, or it would be up on the screen. So it says the hearing could help determine if a planned resentencing hearing next month remains on the schedule or if it will be delayed as a new DA is set to be sworn in. Now, again, this new DA, I might have to, the way he's talked about this, saying that he wants to go over every single thing. He would not be doing like his due diligence if he didn't look over every single piece of paperwork and everything from the prosecution and defense. And he wants to talk to the family. He wants to talk to everybody. He wants to do all the things that Gascon's office did. That's going to take a lot of time. he's not going to be ready for a hearing on December 11th. So I feel like we're going to see a delay. That's what I think. We're going to see a delay. And then I wonder if DA-elect Hochman, that's his name, is just going to kind of let this case wane until people like stop talking about it as much and then just not make a decision. I don't know. I don't know if he could do that. Maybe he could. Maybe he could just say, yeah, I don't agree with Gascon's recommendations. I have a different recommendation. I don't know. It will be interesting to see what happens. But I think it's looking like it would probably be a delay. That's just my guess. All right, back to these ladies. And again, who were watching Joan, Kitty's sister in the middle, and Joan's two daughters. Oldest daughter, youngest daughter. So Kitty was their aunt.
Yeah, I saw that. That's a red flag. That's a red flag.
My whole visit there just turns my stomach, makes me feel
It was
like I failed something
Karen, it
somehow.
was so tense in that house that you couldn't wait to get out.
I couldn't wait to go home.
Did you say anything to your mom or to your sisters about that last visit?
I probably may have said something a lot after the fact, but all these years I think about it constantly, and I just always wish I had done something different. I don't even know what I would have done different, but Jesus, something where somebody would have revealed something truthful that I could have put my finger on, because having just ended my abusive marriage, I was not going to let somebody just stay in that situation. I felt like I wanted to save Kitty. I wanted to get her out of there. I just thought, if she's going through what I went through, well, I'm going to help her, because I could tell she was medicated. When you were with her, you could just tell she was medicated. And it had been going on since they were in Calabasas that I first saw it. And I took a walk with her and she had trouble walking. And I just wish I had known. I just don't think that.
Yeah, so this is saying that it is scheduled for 10:30 a.m. at the Van Nuys West Courthouse. I think they're an hour ahead of me. Maybe. So I'm thinking it's going to be 11:30 my time. It's 10:48 here for me. So I think we got about 40 minutes. I would like to keep listening to this. I'm not going to do anything but order my lunch. So I do have to pull some bread apart for my stuffing on Thanksgiving because I got to get it dried out. And I just have to do some laundry. Yeah, I have a pretty easy day today.
It just seemed like I was there forever after that.
How were they?
They were okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they weren't different than anything other than what you'd expect two kids that just lost their parents. I mean, they weren't running around sobbing or anything, but they'd also been taught to behave in a certain way, so they were.
That's one thing we haven't mentioned, that emotions were not allowed for any reason whatsoever.
Lyle was schooled in that.
When their 17-year-old dog Tristesse died, Eric was home alone. He was 11, and Kitty and Lyle and I came home, and he was on the floor cradling the dog, sobbing. And as he went to stand up, I went to put my arms around him, and Kitty was standing next to me, and she took her arm and swung my arms clear away from him and said, "We do not hug Eric. He has to grow up."
He's a whiner.
And I've never forgotten that moment.
When you realized or had heard that the boys were going to be charged, was it disbelief, or did some things start to come into place for you? Did pieces of the puzzle start to form?
I got a phone call at work, and I didn't believe it. That another day I walked around my office screaming and crying. But no, I didn't believe it.
I didn't either.
It was just hard to believe, and I felt like I'd already lost my aunt and uncle, and now I felt like I was losing my cousins that I was just trying to get to know again. And it was a huge loss. It was like it quadrupled everything, and
Yeah.
And even now, now it's like all these years later, and we're talking about it like this. It feels like yesterday now. And my stomach is just sick. And it didn't initially start to come together, but then weeks started going by, and I would see these scenes in my head and hear Jose at the table and look at Kitty's face on those walks, and some of the things Diane had told me that I wish that I had put together. It just takes your breath away, and you sit back and think, what in God's name happened here, that nobody stepped in and helped these boys? It came to this, that they had to protect themselves like this because no one would. And that makes me really angry.
Lyle tried to talk to his school nurse one time. And he went and sat in the office, and he just sat there and never said a word. And the nurse saw Kitty and Jose at a function, a social function, later, and told her that what had happened. And Lyle never came back to her office.
I believe that.
When did you realize the boys shot their parents over the allegations of sexual abuse? Did they tell you? Did someone?
Jill and Leslie came and met me at a hotel in Scottsdale. I came down from my mountaintop and met them at the hotel, and they talked to me for a couple hours, and it was heartbreaking.
But I already kind of had it in the back of my head.
Well, because you had
and
a
when
recent.
You said that, I was like, yeah, that fits.
Yes, it's like everything,
Then all
it's
the
pieces to the puzzle started falling together.
Tell me.
Just everything over the years that seemed off. I mean, like then not being able to go down the hall or up the stairs if Jose was with them. That was so strange. And then things like that just started falling into line and making sense finally.
And Joan, you said when the attorneys came to see you, did they detail everything?
They pretty much, they told me what they knew, what they'd been told by Lyle and Eric, and told me a few things about Jose, and it was pretty gruesome.
And for an aunt who loves those boys, that must have been just.
Yeah. It's never been easy. Never. I'm so happy that, if you can call it that right now, but Lyle and Eric are excellent citizens in prison.
They are. They're wonderful.
They're both
human
doing.
beings.
I'm so proud of their accomplishments, and I couldn't be prouder of them for handling this the way they are, and considering all that they had gone through. A priest told their Aunt Marta shortly after, when they got picked up, talked to him about the abuse and told him that. And he said that he knew that Eric and Lyle were happier in prison than they would have been at home, and she needed
Gypsy Rose said the same thing. She said she was happier in prison than she was on the outside. You know, I don't know. It's hard to listen to this and not believe it, I think, you know. But that interviewer just asked them, you know, when did you find out that they killed them because of the sexual abuse? And she said when Leslie and Jill, their lawyers, came to the house. But again, on the stand, that is not their reason for killing their parents. It is not because they were sexually abused by them. Their defense is that they were afraid for their lives because their father was confronted by Lyle. So now it was an open family secret and they were scared. This is their defense. They didn't go on a rampage and kill them because they were sexually abused. They killed them because they were afraid they were going to kill them first. That is the defense.
Crossed your mind as long as they were satisfying their father.
But she had always sided with Jose.
So if Jose was going to, in fact, threaten to kill his boys,
She wouldn't have.
She wouldn't have stopped him, I don't think. By that time, she was into the alcohol and the drugs so much that I'm sure that was coloring her life.
She herself was suicidal at that point.
I didn't know that, and I didn't know she had been. The hospital people, doctors are the ones that said that her overdose was suicide. But I didn't know about it until after the fact.
And when was this?
I don't know when it was. It came out during one of the trials.
I mean, it sounds like this. It was so toxic inside of this house that it was going to end tragically.
Yeah,
badly.
Yeah.
I sensed that
Mhm.
with every fiber of my being, as Diane said.
And it was so chilling for that scene when you see the father say, "Well, you've made your decision." You know, I mean, this is the father to his sons.
Okay, wait. So I didn't know that. So Kitty actually attempted suicide and overdosed? And everyone knew about this? I mean, you know what? It just sounds like the red flags were all over the place for this family. Now, I'm not saying that there hasn't been more horrific abuse and people have not murdered anyone, but I mean, you have the mom literally attempting suicide, overdosing, probably ending up in a hospital. I would assume that's how everyone knows. That's, red flag central.
Any abuse, they didn't happen.
But he's an Anderson, so he couldn't.
Yeah, he's an Anderson, and he was abusing his wife at one point.
Yes,
Not
he badly abused
Yes.
his wife, and he couldn't accept that something was going on like this with people that were related to him. It would be impossible for him to believe it.
It really had fractured the Anderson family.
Mhm.
Yeah, it did.
Yes.
And did it split for those who were, believed?
Yeah, at one time I denied that, and they said that in the courtroom once, and Leslie called and told me, and I said, "No, that's not true," because I didn't want to believe it. And but it did. My brothers refused. This is the Midwestern that you're talking about. This wouldn't happen in our family.
Right. Exactly. Robert Rand mentioned to me that there is belief that Kitty was abused when she was a young girl.
He's talked to me about that, and I don't know. Kitty did make a comment to the boy, to Lyle and Eric, that nobody helped me. Why should I help you? And I have a sister-in-law and I who have wondered all these years who she was talking about, and we don't know. And I don't know yet. There are very few suspects, but we don't know.
It's when you say that, again, Lyle had said, when I talked to him, I said, you know, that there was talk that your parents had been abused when they were young. I asked him if it helped him in any way forgive them. And he said he would never have done that to his own children. You know, it doesn't make it
okay.
Right.
I remember when I was very young. I don't talk about this very often, and I've told you briefly.
Travel is officially underway when you have the most company if you're skipping out of town for Thanksgiving. And a bit of good news when it comes to your Thanksgiving dinner, how it's helping keeping your wallet full as well as your belly. You're watching The Rundown. I'm Agent Arambulo in for Robin Winston. It's Monday, November 25th, and we're streaming live on Roku, Samsung TV Plus, Peacock, and Xumo Play. The Thanksgiving travel rush, it is here. LAX is getting crowded as the holiday week gets underway. The busiest days at the airport expected to be Tuesday and Wednesday. And then on Sundays, people return home. A record 80 million Americans are expected to travel this Thanksgiving holiday season. And today, the Menendez brothers returned to court, appearing virtually for a hearing at the Van Nuys courthouse, the same courthouse where Lyle and Eric Menendez were convicted of killing their parents. This morning's hearing is referred to as a status conference, and legal experts expect this to be general housekeeping ahead of the resentencing hearing set for next month.
In fact, there's going to be a new DA in town on December 2. Could be a real game changer. It could go from everybody agreeing, let's resentence them, let's release them, to the new district attorney saying, no, I need a long time to evaluate this.
And it is possible, although unlikely, that the judge could grant the brothers their freedom today. So let's go back to show you how this case caught such widespread national attention. On August 20th, 1989, Kitty and Jose Menendez were shot to death in their home in Beverly Hills. In March of 1990, their sons, Lyle and Eric, were arrested. After a mistrial and retrial, the brothers were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Fast forward to this October, documentaries and possible new evidence renewed interest in this case. And then LA District Attorney George Gascon announced that he would seek to have the brothers resentenced. So stay with NBC4 as we track what happens next. We'll be in the courtroom today as that hearing gets underway. Our live coverage begins at 10 a.m. exclusively on our NBC4 Los Angeles news channel. Just scan the QR code on your screen to watch. And a sad update on that search for a woman from Hawaii who is missing in LA. Her father was found dead near LAX from an apparent suicide. The LAPD says Ryan Kobayashi was found at the bottom of a 7-story parking garage Sunday morning. He had recently flown in from Hawaii to help friends and family look for his daughter, Hannah. She landed at LAX November 8th, went sightseeing, but never made her connecting flight to New York. Ryan recently spoke with us on Thursday about Hannah.
It's just a nightmare. Every parent's nightmare. You know, it's just crazy. We don't know where to start, where to begin, and it's like a grain of sand in the ocean. You know, it's anything. It could be anything possible.
Well, police have not said anything about a possible connection between Ryan's death and his daughter's disappearance. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, turning towards thoughts of suicide, we want you to know that there is effective help out there for you. We have the hotline for the National Suicide Lifeline right there on your screen. You can call or text 988 and help is available 24/7. CHP now says they're looking for a 28-year-old man in connection with a possible road.
Okay, I guess they're just going right on with their local news, but I'm going to start pulling my bread apart for my homemade stuffing on Thanksgiving. Excited. Making all the things, doing all the things. So, but back to this case. Again, guys, I just have a feeling we're going to see a delay. This new DA guy, if you guys never listened to him, I suggest you do. But for those of you that are hoping that they get out, don't say I didn't tell you so. because I don't know what this guy's going to do. I just don't have a good feeling about him. As far as releasing them, I don't know. And Newsom is just like, no, it's up to him. Newsom is California's governor, of course, and he could just put an end to this entire show at this very moment and just grant them clemency. But he said, nope. He's leaving it up to the new DA-elect to do that. He trusts the voters, and he's going to let him do his job. So, let's get back to this.
Resentenced.
So we want to get to our legal analyst, Royal Oakes. Royal, good to have you with us once again. So can you walk us through what happens today? Because there's two hearings we're talking about over the next few weeks. This obviously the first. What's going to happen?
This is a status conference, so the judge is going to try to get his arms around the requests for freedom for the Menendez brothers. One request is let's resentence them. Perhaps say, really, it should have been manslaughter, which would be under 10 years, and they already served way more than that. And the other request is a habeas corpus petition, which basically says, oh, they're being incarcerated illegally and they should be sprung. So the judge is going to look ahead. And of course, the wild card is what happens when there's a new district attorney sworn in just a few days.
So let's talk about, Conan, the interest in this case. You've been following this for years, for decades. And now today, it seems like there's such a renewed interest. Why do you think that is?
Good. Well, for one thing, true crime, as we can all agree, is the one element of popular culture that never seems to go away. If you talk to people in our industry, in the entertainment industry, they'll tell you there's this insatiable appetite for true crime. And Royal would appreciate this. The Menendez brothers was the first interaction, the less than harmonic convergence of television, justice, the true crime genre. Remember, we were not used to seeing trials on television in real time. Prosecutors will tell you in this case that they were shocked when they would walk down the phalanx of cameras and realize that they weren't just preparing the prosecution against these two individuals. They were preparing a case that the entire world was going to see. And at that time, it was really a first when you had an entire mediascape that was focused on a trial in Los Angeles. Up until then, this would be a local case.
Right.
There'd be some national publicity, but this took on a life of its own because it really was the first time.
Well, and also there were so many interesting characteristics. You've got wealth, you've got Beverly Hills, you've got these two brothers, they're tennis stars. There were so many elements that kind of fostered this public interest. It's great.
Good point. That's fundamental to it, is that it was sexy. It was Beverly Hills, there was glamour, there was wealth.
Skirt on that. I'm just going to take offense for a minute that this man just called this case sexy. Wrong word, sir. Very wrong word for this case. Okay, that was just so out of pocket. Anyway.
Perfect self-defense.
Self-defense, right. Which, again, that's something we had never heard of before. But it was this idea that they had been abused. They were feared for their life, and maybe the parents were watching television eating ice cream, but they still were convinced they were going to lose their lives at some point to mom and dad.
Roy, what's the most likely outcome from today's scenario, the hearing here today? And what do we know about the judge who's overlooking this particular hearing?
The judge is known as somebody who's very fearless, who is willing to make tough decisions. And that's good for the Menendez brothers because it's a little bit of a tough call to say, well, gee, the judge years ago said life without the possibility of parole, and now you want to parole them? So this is a good judge, I think, for the Menendez brothers. But essentially, a status conference is really going to be the judge focusing on what the issues are, and everybody's looking ahead now to December 11, when they could be resentenced. And the amazing thing is, a couple of years ago, the California legislature passed a law that said any judge may resentence some people if they have been rehabilitated, if they're no longer violent, and here's the kicker, if they suffered childhood trauma. So the Menendez case is like the poster child for resentencing. So they have to be optimistic in that sense, but you never know. Will the new DA say, no, wait a minute, I need a few months? And then will the new DA say, I don't go along with it? these folks, yes, had imperfect self-defense in the sense that it's only self-defense if you have an imminent fear of death. And they didn't. They crept up behind their parents and blew them away.
So isn't it interesting also that the fact that even if this is just a housekeeping hearing and they just are, kind of just talk about what's going to happen from here on out, this is the first time that we've seen Eric and Lyle in the courtroom, even though it is remote. They're going to be together remotely, having a presence there. And then also, it feels like we're all going to be looking at this judge, looking for any indication of how he might lean.
Exactly right. At a status conference, usually you don't get the final substantive decisions, but often I've been through a lot of status conferences where the judges surprise you and give an indication as to where they're leaning, sort of challenging the two sides to provide further final information.
All right, we just got a note from Eric Leonard, our investigative reporter who's inside the court. He says that the family members for the Menendez brothers have arrived. They're on the 9th floor and they're being held away from the courtroom. The court is still handling this morning's calendar, all unrelated matters as well. So the hearing, it appears, likely will be delayed. We'll keep you posted on that. Conan, Royal touched on this a little while ago about the political aspect of this. You had George Gascon really pushing for resentencing. He, of course, was pushed out. And then you have Nathan Hochman, who's likely to review the case. Can you talk to us about how politics plays a role in this?
Well, Royal mentions the new state law, relatively new. Remember, it used to be called California Department of Corrections. They added the R, rehabilitation. So when it came to George Gascon and most progressive district attorneys, you could make the argument, most district attorneys, that part of the equation is rehabilitation. And so George Gascon would say, listen, that has been accomplished here. And due to the legislative action, the legislature, which is more progressive, is certainly more liberal, they believe, there are a couple of things they believe, that if you committed a crime before you were the age of 26, you should be given the benefit of the doubt because your brain hasn't hardened by the time you're 26. There was one legislator who actually introduced a bill that would have changed the juvenile law so that if you committed a crime before the age of 26, you could go to juvenile court and not an adult court. That's how much they believe in this. And so there's that. I think the new district attorney, Nathan Hochman, he has said that he's going to review the case. He's going to talk to the prosecutors, which he doesn't believe George Gascon did, the ones who actually prosecuted this case. I think there's a lot of pressure, though, on him, for him at the outset not to look like he's going to come down hard. He's a right-wing Republican, a former Republican. He represents a very liberal county. I think he's going to try to thread the needle here, but he reads the tea leaves. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's not going to be a definite no.
Right. All right. NBC4's Robert Kovacic continues our coverage out of Van Nuys. So, Robert, you spoke with Lyle Menendez several years ago. You've been following this as close as anybody. What are your thoughts about today?
Well, first of all, let's describe right now the situation here in Van Nuys. There is media from around the world. There is probably more media than we even saw a few weeks ago when George Gascon made that request saying that he wants the judge to resentence them. And so now we sit out here and we wait for any word from inside where, again, our Eric Leonard is in the courtroom. But from what we understand, you have the big picture here. This is the Menendez brothers trying to explore their paths to freedom. And there are a number of different avenues, as Royal and Conan and you all are discussing. It includes the resentencing. It includes the new evidence, if you will, that letter that Eric Menendez wrote to his cousin 9 months before his parents were murdered. In that letter, alluding to what appears to be abuse by his father, saying he was afraid of his father coming into his room at night, telling his cousin he didn't know what he was going to do. That letter written to Andy Cano, who has since taken his own life. Andy Cano's mother has authenticated it because a lot of people are wondering if that letter is in fact real. She says it is. And then, of course, you have the NBC documentary on Peacock, Menendez plus Menudo, that revelation that a member of that boy band Menudo several years ago was, he said, sexually assaulted by the father, Jose Menendez, when Jose was head of RCA Records. So those are the two pieces of evidence that they will try to bring into play here to begin a path to freedom. And then, of course, you also have Gascon saying that he believes that they have been rehabilitated. They've done so much in prison that if you drop the charge and make it manslaughter, then they will have served their time. He was so impressed with them, especially said, considering that they were in life in prison without the possibility of parole. So big picture, so we begin, the Menendez brothers look for avenues to freedom, but there are so many different subplots going on here as well. You have the DA versus DA, Gascon and Hochman. Hochman saying, I'm not going to make any decision. I want to review this case first. Governor Newsom saying, I agree, let Nathan Hochman, the incoming DA, who soundly defeated George Gascon just weeks ago in the elections. Newsom saying, you know what, let's wait to hear what he has to say before I decide on clemency, even if the governor possibly could be leaning in that direction. Then you have another subplot where there are members of the Menendez family who, as you mentioned, are inside right now. Garagos's office tells me they do believe that members of the Menendez family will speak this morning, especially the two older members of the family, Kitty's sister one, but then bring in Kitty's brother into play, Milton Anderson, who says they should stay in prison. He's not buying the self-defense because of sexual assault. He believes that the brothers did this in a premeditated way simply to gain their family's inheritance. Now, when it comes to the Menendez brothers themselves, Mark Garagos, their high-profile defense attorney, says they have been through, and I'm quoting here, a roller coaster of emotions. They are cautiously optimistic going into this. Let's go back to 7 years ago. What started this sort of Menendez fascination, once again, if you will, began with an NBC docudrama about the Menendez brothers. And that led to a lot of interest in the case, and it led to us being able to access Lyle Menendez and speaking with him. We did extensive phone conversations with him in prison, and we asked him specifically, does the possibility of getting out ever enter your mind? And if so, where do you go from there? This is what he had to say.
I am hopeful that there might be an understanding that you can rehabilitate and get out after a period of time, a long period of time, which my brother and I have clearly continued to do. So I don't know. I mean, we're not. We're hopeful because if you lose hope, that's kind of when the downward spiral occurs. So my brother and I don't lose hope. I think the laws across the country have been changing for prisoners in terms of realizing that they probably can rehabilitate and be productive members of society. And my brother and I certainly feel that we would be very productive members of society and continue to help in the areas that we started helping in prison. But those are decisions that we made by other people, so we're hopeful.
Do you ever allow yourself to think about what your life could be like or would be like outside of jail?
I don't. I think it would be a little torturous to dwell on that. So for me, that's not the form that the hope is in. For me, hope is just keeping one's spirit strong, believing that your life is not a failed life just because it's marked with so much tragedy, and just knowing that you can never really predict the future. And maybe I'll be reunited with my family out there, and they're certainly hoping for that someday. But my brother and I just try to stay healthy and keep our spirits up and see what happens.
The fascination with the Menendez brothers only continued earlier this year with that Netflix series called Monsters. Even though the Menendez brothers didn't like the series and vocally came out against it, Ryan Murphy, the producer, said he believed it would start their path to freedom. And so it begins here in Van Nuys, inside a courtroom. Our Eric Leonard is inside there. Again, this could mean the...
You know what? I know a lot of people didn't like the way that Lyle specifically was portrayed in the Monsters. Ryan Murphy, the guy that created American Horror Story. Sorry, I got a protein shake. I need some energy. I don't have much to do today, like I said, but I don't know. There's just little things that I could get done. So protein shakes always do that for me. Anyway, Ryan Murphy, I thought it was very well done because it was very Ryan Murphy-ish. I have been watching American Horror Story since it came out. I've never missed a season. And it was his portrayal. You know, it wasn't meant to be a documentary. It wasn't meant to be anything like that. So, and not to mention, you know, the family has come out and said that Lyle has never raised his voice, yada, yada. But there have been people that he went to school with, like high school, that have said that he was a bully. So, you know, you can be different things to different people. And two things can be true at the same time. He could have been very low key around his family and not so much outside of the family, which honestly, if he was a bully, it would even fit in more with his abuse allegations with his parents, because a lot of the time kids that are bullies, there's usually definitely something going on at home where they feel inferior. So then they take that out on other kids because they can, you know. But I wanted to read this to you guys real quick. Lyle Menendez has a Twitter account, X account, that his wife runs for him still, even after his 21-year-old girlfriend. I'm sorry, but I have to throw that in because when I sit there and listen to him say stuff like, you know, yeah, I think we're rehabilitated and blah, 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 blah. Dude, I have to question your choices when you're in prison. You have a lawyer wife. It can't get much better than that, you know. And you throw that away for a 21-year-old British college student. You know, a little creepy there. But anyway, so Rebecca Sneed, Lyle's wife, posted on his Twitter account, and she said, regarding live streaming tomorrow, no one knows. The judge will make his decision tomorrow when he gets to work. Well, we do know because we're live streaming now. Okay, let me shut up. I don't know what's going on there. Looks like nothing. Looks like they're just waiting. It's almost time. You know, we got less than 10 minutes. But they did say they think that there could be some delay. The court's dealing with other things they have on the docket. So I think this is going to be pretty cut and dry. I don't know why. Shut up, Jess. I know, right, Colleen? But yeah, they're just playing like elevator music for this. So I guess I have to talk right now. Well, I drank my little protein shake. I got lemonade. You guys ever had the human bean? So good. I got 2 scoops of protein and I got lemonade flavor. Really good. You fell back asleep? Wake up, woman. What are you doing sleeping? What time is it where you're at, Colleen? Are you on the East Coast? You never had one? They're really good. Protein shakes always just give me a boost of energy. You know, your body definitely needs protein. So protein shakes, good. I'm already thinking about the stuff I'm going to get done when I get off this live stream. I can't drink coffee. I can't. Cali 1030. Yeah. Which for me, oh, you're in Cali? You're in Cali? Wait, did I read that wrong? Yeah, Cali 1030 is 11:30 for me. And it's 11:24 here. So is it 10:24 there for you, right? What time is it where you're at, Colleen? What is the time? 10:23. Okay. So we're right. So yeah, this is right. I was really early with this, like 2 hours early. I read it wrong. I hate the different time zones. I really hate the different time zones. Stop yelling at me, Colleen. Colleen's like, yes. What are you not getting, lady? It's 10:25 now. Sorry. All right, well, it's close to time. And I'm looking at Lyle Menendez's wife's Twitter account for him and that little post that she made. I was looking at the comments, and they're very positive comments. Praying for the best outcome. They deserve justice and freedom. Praying for tomorrow's outcome. Sending hugs to y'all. Praying everything goes well for Lyle and Eric. Praying for a good outcome. Let's pray to God to enlighten his head. Yeah. Oh, Robert Rand is there. He posted about an hour ago on X, Twitter, and said, "Good morning. I'm just about to leave for Van Nuys and texting with other reporters as we try to help each other out." So he's there, and under his post, there's a lot of same type of stuff. People praying, people saying they're praying. I don't see a lot of negative comments. I have seen a lot of people try to do mental gymnastics to justify Lyle's bad behavior in jail. I've seen that. I've seen people say, it's none of our business. This is private life. Well, if you're watching the case, he didn't just, do something morally questionable. He had contraband, cell phone contraband in the prison. So, to say, oh, this is none of your business. Like, you're fine, Colleen. I wish these people would stop doing like local weather reports and stuff. I mean, it's almost 10:30. We got 3 minutes. And they want to tell us, look, Colleen, you might get your weather here.
69 in Alhambra, 67 for you in Glendale. So as we go over the long-range futurecast, so we have this ridge of high pressure that's building nearby. This is going to bring us the northeasterly wind. It's going to help bump up the temperatures as we head into the coming days. When you're keeping track out in the Pacific, there's a deep area of low pressure, a big storm system, and attached to it, we have an atmospheric river. So this is going to be mainly focusing over Northern California, the Pacific Northwest, bringing rounds of wet weather for areas well to the north of us. For us, we are expected to remain pretty quiet throughout much of this work week, but that could be changing as we head into the weekend. As you see, the band of moisture sliding its way to the south, and as it continues to do so, it will lose a little bit of that moisture. But as we check out the precipitation outlook, this is as we look ahead to the weekend and even the start of the work week.
Ooh la la, it's
right now, the
starting.
Menendez brothers fight for freedom. Lyle and Eric Menendez to make their first court appearance in nearly 30 years.
The brothers will appear remotely from the San Diego prison. They are serving life sentences for their parents' murders in 1989. Today, the spotlight is inside the Van Nuys courtroom. Thank you so much for joining us for this special coverage. I'm Lynette Romero.
And I'm Agent Arambulo, and joining us is Conan Nolan and our legal analyst, Royal Oaks. Thank you for being here. We want to walk you through a timeline of how we got here. In August 1989, Kitty and Jose Menendez were killed in their home in Beverly Hills. 7 months later, their sons, Lyle and Eric, were arrested.
After a mistrial and retrial, the Menendez brothers were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Now, fast forward to this October, documentaries and possible new evidence renewed so much interest in this case. LA District Attorney George Gascon announced that he would seek to have the brothers resentenced.
All right, let's check in with Royal Oaks right now. Royal, we've been talking about it's a status conference, a status check today, but we were hearing just a short time ago from our reporter Eric Leonard in the courthouse that it looks like it might be delayed, but that's, I'm imagining, fairly commonplace.
Absolutely. Judges usually have 5, 10, 20 matters on their calendar. Even though this is the high profile one, other matters have to be attended to. So you never know when they're going to get around to it. But when they do, it's going to be fascinating to see the judges take. December 11 is the date that theoretically there could be a resentencing hearing to basically free the brothers, because if there's a resentencing, the judge could say, you know, it really should have been manslaughter and that would have been under 10 years and they've already served decades. So in December, they could be walking free.
Conan, I want to bring you into the conversation because you have seen this case evolve. How do you feel about what's happening today? Looking at the world's media present in Van Nuys right now, and you got people lining up just to get those 16 seats inside that courtroom.
Right. Well, we had talked about this convergence of the case from the very beginning. Camera in the courtroom. We weren't expecting that. Beverly Hills murder, brothers. You know, and remember, the way they murdered their parents was pretty outrageous, and so. Yeah, there was a dramatic amount of interest in the case, but also we are relitigating this through the media. This is, some have suggested this is justice by podcast, and the fact that there's, we saw the documentaries, Robert Kovacic mentioned a few of them, and the dramatic retelling, which all gets to a genre that is extremely still popular, which is true crime. And this is sort of the best true crime story out there outside of maybe O.J. Simpson. And so it's interesting point for the Sixth Amendment, the jurisprudence in America. You have a jury that rendered a verdict. Usually that's it, done and finished. Mm-hmm. But now we live in an age where it can be relitigated in popular media and ends up in an event like this.
Conan, you mentioned Robert Kovacic. We want to check in with Robert right now. He continues our coverage in Van Nuys, where he spoke with Lyle Menendez several years ago. Robert.
Yes, we did. And we will talk about that in just a minute. But I want to describe the situation here outside of the Van Nuys courthouse. You mentioned the interest in this case. It is really nothing short of breathtaking. There is media here from around the world waiting for any piece of information. The reason why the media has really gathered here today, understanding that not much may happen, that this is really a status conference, it is because NBC4 confirmed on Friday with their high-powered defense attorney, Mark Garagos, that Eric and Lyle Menendez will appear in court today via a web link. We also expect to hear from them. Garagos' office also told me this morning that we expect to hear from certain family members. And we're going to qualify that when I say certain family members that are supportive of the Menendez brothers being released. When family members arrived here, it was like watching something out of an award show. They were surrounded by cameras trying to ask questions to find out any information from them. Some of them are elderly, including Kitty's sister. We also may be hearing today, though we don't know, there is talk of Milton Anderson, an important subplot here, because not all of the Menendez family members are buying the self-defense because of sexual assault. We had no choice to do this, to murder our parents because Eric Menendez was allegedly being sexually assaulted by his father. One of those people who's not buying it is Kitty's brother, Milton Anderson, who has been very vocal that this was done with the motive of greed and wanting to take their father's money. And it was done for the inheritance. And when we talk about what was done, it was murder, going into that home on Elm Drive in Beverly Hills and shooting their parents multiple times with a shotgun, going back outside to the driveway, reloading, and then finishing the job. So we have family members in the courtroom, expecting to hear from family members today. We're expecting to hear from the Menendez brothers today. And while we talk about family members, let's talk about Lyle Menendez. 7 years ago, an NBC true crime series premiered. We talked to Lyle Menendez, that would be in 2017, 7 years ago, in relation to that crime story that was being premiered on NBC. And when we talked to Lyle Menendez, he spoke specifically about his family members.
I have a very supportive family. My mother and father's family and sisters, and just a lot of cousins, and so I'm able to call, and we just sort of stay close as a family even from in here, and their support has been very miraculous, very forgiving, and just really tremendous.
Is it something that you still think about every day, the day of the murders, or is it something that you try to put behind you?
I don't try to put it behind me. I think it's just a part of, who my brother and I are, everything that's happened to us. I've learned it's unhealthy to sort of try to escape or run from painful memories. And so, but at the same time, I don't try to relive them every day.
So when we hear from Lyle and Eric Menendez today in court, we're not expected to hear much, according to their attorney, Mark Garagos. How exactly are they feeling right now? Well, Garagos, when we spoke to him last week, told NBC4 that they are cautiously optimistic. He said, that they understand that the incoming DA Hochman wants to review this case before making a decision. And they understand that the clemency decision hasn't been decided yet by Governor Newsom as he waits to see what Hochman wants to do. And so he said they're riding a roller coaster of emotions. And that roller coaster of emotions, now that ride starts right here today in Van Nuys as we begin to see light rain falling here outside of the courthouse. For now, I'm Robert Kovacic. Let's go back to you.
Robert, thank you. We are getting word that it appears that the hearing is underway and that people inside the courtroom have been told to turn off their phones, which is, kind of the way it always works. But they maybe have just begun to start this. So we should be hopefully hearing some more about this.
And our investigative reporter, Eric Leonard, is there in the courtroom. So we'll be checking in with him as soon as he's able to turn his phone back on and head outside of the courthouse once that hearing is complete. Only 16 members of the general public are allowed inside. And there was a lottery this one to see who got those seats.
In fact, people got there bright and early, dark and early, really before the sun came up, waiting hours outside of the courthouse this morning for a chance to snag a seat. NBC4's John Cadiz-Klimak has been out there this morning in front of the courthouse, also bright and early. You're seeing a ton of interest, and you were probably one of the first there, and now you've got a sea of reporters and photographers there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. I think we were the first crew that arrived here on scene early this morning, and already there was one person who wanted to be a part of this, to get that ticket to get inside. Now, he claims that he actually went to school with Eric Menendez, told the whole story about how he's hoping for freedom out of all of this. But in order for all of this to work, the court knew that there was going to be a lot of people who were interested in this, and they said there were only going to be 16 seats open to the public. They'd be able to get inside to actually sit in that courtroom to listen to what's going to happen today. But in order to do that, they had to have a lottery. We probably counted about 24 people or so who came, who wanted to be a part of that, and then the numbers were drawn.
All right, for the last ticket, it will be 6948. Let's go. Got it. Congratulations.
Certainly some of the folks who did win that lottery felt like they had won that. Again, 16 members of the public, most of them, if not all that we spoke with, lined up because they believe Eric and Lyle Menendez deserve to be released from prison. Between international media that's here this morning and the public wanting to see how this drama unfolds, this may actually be the hottest ticket in town right now. A very LA story, murder, convictions, prison, and now the possibility of redemption. Nearly everyone we spoke with had either seen the various documentaries or watched that Netflix series, all of which ultimately led to the DA's decision to have another look at that 35-year-old case. And a lot of talk today about what should happen in that courthouse. But as we spoke to the folks who actually got that ticket to get inside, that golden ticket, so to speak, they said they had very personal reasons to be here.
I want to be a part of it because I just felt like, as a survivor from sexual assault, I feel people can get second chances. Sometimes I know what they did was wrong, but then there's people like Kim Kardashian and a bunch of big celebrities behind this that are backing it up. So that's why I'm here today.
Okay, we're going to have to stop right there. He's there because Kim Kardashian is supporting them. Like, come on. Isn't it wild? Like, what a circus that they actually have a lottery going just to get in the courthouse to see this. I mean, the Menendez case, honestly, from the beginning has just been a complete circus. It's never stopped. You know, even though it hasn't been the forefront of the news like it is now, there's always been some sort of coverage on them. But I can't believe that people are lining up for a lottery. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you wanted to write a book or something, I don't know. But if Kim Kardashian, because Kim Kardashian is backing this, that is not a good enough reason for me to want to show up there. But I won't lie. If I was there, I don't know. I would feel very weird about being in a lottery system. This feels weird, but I guess I would want to see it. Am I like imagining this, or did I hear them like kind of say they're not airing this live because we're gonna have to switch? We might have to go to Court TV here. Because if they're not going to air it live, I want to watch it live, darn it. I don't want to just hear their court reporter, you know? All right, let me check Court TV and see if they're showing this live. Hold on a second, guys. Yeah, the Kardashians. That's what he said. Kim Kardashian's backing him. That's why he's there. Like, okay, buddy. Sure.
That he just wanted to be a part of this whole process. How do you think that impacts, I guess, the case, the public perception of it, the influence on the key players, the judge in this case? We've heard about different district attorneys, Gaston pushing for resentencing, Hochman wanting to review the case, the governor even weighing in saying, you know, he wants to give Hochman a chance to review it as well. He wants to, you know, not make any decisions regarding clemency. Just what's your take on what's going on here?
You did mention the one thing that the interview also pointed out. He mentioned the Kardashians. And so that speaks to the cult of personality, which is also part of this. Again, it's the cross-pollination of a multiple different things that we see in society today. Those who were in the courtroom prosecuting this case, justifiably, I think, are extremely upset over this because they say they got it right. And by the way, in those documentaries, or at least in the Monsters case, things they left out. And, you know, yes, Royal accurately portrayed the contradictions over killing the mother. Remember, she was still alive, crawling, and they went back out, reloaded the shotgun, and put it up against her cheek. The Beverly Hills homicide detectives, two of them, they have, 2 murders a year, they were horrified with the crime scene that they saw. And also pretty stunned that I think it was Lyle, hours later, wanted to get access to where the murders had taken place. Why? Because they needed their tennis gear. That was the first reason why they said, well, this is kind of odd. Why do you need to go back in there? Oh, I got to get my tennis gear. And then, of course, the spending spree, the Porsche and all that. There's an argument to be made that we weren't sensitive to the case of child molestation back then. Remember, it was during the McMartin school.
I'll say this about Lyle and his tennis racket. Again, I watched his full cross-examination last night, and what he said about that was he asked to do that because he was trying to make sure there wasn't any more evidence. And he said, it worked. Asking to go back in for my tennis rackets worked. They let him back in the house.
And the public interest in this, eventually that's going to happen.
I agree. If I had to go to Vegas and bet, I'd say they will be set free. And your great point about McMartin, This Judge Weisberg, he was like the Zelig of the American judicial system. He handled McMartin, he handled the Rodney King beating case, and he handled the Menendez cases. And he changed his mind about cameras. Initially, he approved cameras, but then after the O.J. Simpson situation in the final Menendez trial, it was no cameras, and that's where we are now.
You know what I think is fascinating about this is now we're talking about these two convicted criminals who are in their 50s, and yet they are still sparking interest in young people. We were just talking about how the most recent person to be doing a lot of visiting at the prison for Lyle Menendez is a 21-year-old college student who they are claiming might be in a relationship with him. He is now legally separated from his wife. The fact that you've got a 50-year-old man who has captured the interest of a 21-year-old girl, college student, and she is going to do whatever she can to try to help him. Don't you find that fascinating?
I do. Obviously, she wasn't alive when the murders took place for the trial. I think a lot of people do get wrapped up in the idea of justice having been denied, or trying to rewrite an injustice that took place before you arrived on the planet. And that's not to say that there isn't merit to what is transpiring here, but I think it gets to that true crime fascination, the idea that I talked with individuals who watched the O.J. Simpson pursuit. They were really rooting for O.J. Simpson, and they saw it as them fleeing an unjust system that was going to target them because they were black, him and Alec Collins, who was behind the wheel. And I think there's a little bit of that here too, not in terms of race, but that these were victims of a society that allowed for the kind of child molestation and brutality to happen in that Beverly Hills home. So yeah, I think there are a lot of people who see this and they believe justice was not served. It's kind of I take the responsibility to see that this justice is provided, that these boys get what they deserved years ago, but were denied by an unjust system.
And Royal, we talked about the significance of today's hearing. There's going to be another hearing in early December. That likely would be more significant, most likely, compared to what's going to happen today. What would happen at that second hearing?
Well, and the wild card is between now and the December 11 hearing, where there will be a resentencing, and possibly because they've been rehabilitated, because they were victims of childhood trauma, because there's new evidence. A lot of people are betting on them being released. But between now and then, December 2, a new sheriff in town, literally a new district attorney who may have a different take from George Gascon. And so it may not be a unanimous situation where everybody is clamoring to release the brothers.
How do you show rehabilitation? All these years behind bars, I think I read that they planted a garden or something. Like, how does that equate with rehabilitation from such a brutal crime?
Well, first, you keep your nose clean in prison. You don't act up. You don't try to escape. You don't get into fights. Secondly, you do good things. And of course, George Gascon at a press conference recently went into great detail about how the brothers could have just sort of been alone and not done anything good, but they started programs, meditation programs, helping other inmates to get through problems. And again, the California legislature has said that's one of the factors. If you really show you've done a good job in prison, then that's something that could justify your early release.
And your take on this new evidence that has come up here, do you think it's powerful, super relevant to this case?
It is, because, Judge Stanley Weisberg took some flack because in the final trial where they were convicted of murder, he very extremely limited the evidence of abuse. A lot of people said, well, why shouldn't the jury have been given the option of manslaughter? But he said, no, it really was self-defense. And yet now we know that there's so much public consciousness about this. As you point out, Conan, it's very likely that they're going to get a fresh look. And it wouldn't be a shock if a month or so from now, they're walking on Wilshire Boulevard, shopping on Rodeo Drive.
All right. NBC4's Robert Kovacic will continue our coverage now out of Van Nuys. So, Robert, you have had a conversation with the brothers, and now you have a whole different perspective as you're watching things happen with the rest of the world's media.
When you talk about the world's media, we have people from Brazil and Peru tuning in right now. That's why the interest is so high. But Lynette, Adrian, Royal, Conan, why are we here? Why are we here when so many people now believe that Eric Menendez was molested by his father when a jury did not? Well, it comes down to a new piece of evidence that changed a lot of people's minds. First of all, I want to show you a photo that NBC4 has obtained. This is a photo of Andy Cano standing next to Eric Menendez. Who's Andy Cano? He is Eric's cousin. He lives in Florida, lived in Florida because Andy Cano has since died. But years ago, there was a letter uncovered, 2018 to be exact. And in that letter, as you see right now, Eric Menendez tells his cousin Andy that he fears that his father is going to come into his room at night. He doesn't know what to do. He can't tell anyone about it. He is scared. And he said he can't tell anyone, especially Lyle. Now, why is this letter relevant? Because it is the first piece of physical evidence that actually alludes to alleged sexual molestation, sexual assault. Another piece of evidence that a judge is going to be asked to reconsider when it comes to the Menendez sentencing is that there was that Peacock documentary you can watch right now. It is called Menendez plus Menudo, and in it, a former member of the boy band Menudo says he was sexually assaulted by Jose Menendez when Jose Menendez was heading up RCA Records. So those are the two key pieces of evidence that they're going to introduce, because remember, years ago, an NBC4 talked to him, Detective Les Zoller, who has since passed, told NBC4 absolutely it wasn't true. There is no evidence of sexual assault, and the Beverly Hills Police Department looked everywhere for it, and they couldn't find it. That evidence was uncovered in the home of Andy Cano in Florida in 2018 that they say now proves their point. And then we'll leave you with this. Lyle Menendez, when we spoke to him in 2017, told us that his brother was raped. He called it childhood rape. And he said in that conversation with us, this is when the two were separated and weren't at the same prison at the same time. He said he goes to bed every night fearing that Eric was going to take his own life. That's the very latest here outside of the Van Nuys House. Let's go back to you.
Robert, I want to talk to you a little bit about all of this interest. We've been talking this morning about the cult-like interest in this case and how it's been renewed. We do know that both Lyle and Eric both got married while they've been in prison. We understand that Lyle is now legally separated, is getting a ton of interest from a 21-year-old college student who believes in his innocence. What are your thoughts about how this has gained such a cult-like fascination?
Well, I think you can go to what George Gascon said when he had that news conference several weeks ago, saying that he believes that the brothers should be resentenced. He was very impressed with their rehabilitation in prison, that they have done so much, even though they were life in prison without parole. He believes that the culture has changed. We had a one-on-one interview with the outgoing DA, Gascon, and he said back then there was no belief that men could be raped. He said now people do believe it. So I think he is credited.
They keep skipping right over this question. Hi, Tamara, damn it. Do not hate me. I have not seen you in forever. How are you? So yes, I totally agree. They keep skipping over this. It's like the men don't want to really say much about this. But Tamara is saying in the 21, in my opinion, the 21-year-old says to me, once out, the running wild will begin. I agree with you. I 1000% agree with you. They can skip over this. The female keeps asking this question and they just kind of go into other stuff, but this is a part of his character. I mean, you could skip over it if you want. You could say, oh God, I see people in this comment section on this stream that's happening, them saying, oh, his private life is irrelevant. No, it's not. No, it's not. This is character. You're seeing it. It's playing out in front of you. Paris is saying, why isn't there cameras inside the courtroom? I don't know. Court TV is not even doing this. I don't know. All right, Tamara. Tamara's saying, I know people who were badly abused and molested and did not go on to murder or molest. They didn't want to hurt others as they had been hurt. I think it can go either way, in my opinion. Yeah, well, you heard that news guy say that if he had to go to Vegas and bet on this, that he would bet that they're definitely getting out. I don't know where I would place my bet because I don't feel like it's a sure bet. I really feel like this could go either way too. This new DA is a little different, I'm telling you. So I don't know, maybe he will, because there has been like a cult-like following. And I like how nicely they talk about this 21-year-old, like, oh, she believes in his innocence. Listen, this girl is not traveling from Britain to California just because she believes in his innocence, okay? He's had 2 contraband cell phones just to communicate with her. From what I understand, I don't know if this is true or not, but people are saying you can't call internationally from prisons. Maybe that's true. I should probably look that up. But I guess that's why he needed the phones. I don't know. But either way, it's definitely a show of character that they seemingly want to gloss over and act like this is like a foreshadowing of what is to come with Lyle. If he's making these decisions in prison, he's going to get buck wild when he gets out. That's my prediction. And I've been wrong in the past, but I'm just saying.
No excuse for what he did, but he is hoping that during his life in prison, because while we talked to him, he said it was too torturous a thought to even think about life outside of prison, that while life in prison, he didn't want the tragedies that marred his life to stop him from being a productive person, even if that meant when he was behind bars. So he was level, he was honest, and again, he took full accountability for those murders and said that what they did at the time, they had no choice.
Robert Kovacic reporting for us from Van Nuys. We will get back to you with more as it continues to develop. Let's get back to Royal Oaks and talk about today. I am curious about the judge in this case. So based on the reading and the documentaries that I've watched, the judge in the first trial, he's the same judge for the second trial, and he made a very specific decision that I think changed the course of this case in not allowing any of the allegations of sexual abuse to be talked about at all. He pulled that completely out. And just the way he handled that, he's not part of this proceeding, but do you think that that will have a lasting impact today?
Absolutely. Judge Stanley Weisberg made the decision after the initial trial. It was just one trial, but 2 juries for Lyle and Eric. He made the decision that, okay, I've heard the evidence of abuse, and he didn't think that it was enough to justify a manslaughter count. Manslaughter is where you intended to kill, but your mind was just gone. You were deranged, you're overcome by passion, and therefore you go to prison for 5 to 10 years, as opposed to murder. You premeditated it, you knew what you were doing, and you go away for 25 to life. In the second final trial, the judge said, I'm going to let a little bit of evidence in about abuse just to talk about their state of mind in terms of premeditation for murder, but I'm going to limit it extremely. As a result, the jury had 2 choices, murder or let them free. And whereas in the first trial, all the men on the jury said, fry him, murder. All the women on the jury said, oh no, manslaughter. In the final trial, all 12 men and women said, okay, it's going to be murder. So that was a crucial decision. Now we see this new evidence, the letter to the cousin, the Menudo boy band member. That's an argument for the Menendez brothers' lawyer to say these brothers have been abused. They've been victimized by a deprivation of their rights. The evidence should have been brought in. And again, I don't think we're going to see a second Menendez trial. I think the judge is going to make the hard call. Either he's going to say, I'm going to resentence them for manslaughter and they're free, or he's going to say, nice try. But they knew what they were doing. They planned. As Conan pointed out, they reloaded before killing their mother. So that's the tough call that this judge is going to have to make. But as I mentioned, he's known as being fearless. He's willing to make tough calls. And I think Mark Garagos likes that idea because it's not easy to spring 2 people who were told by the initial judge, you are never going to see the light of day.
It's also not easy to go against all this public opinion is saying free them, either way he's going to go against someone.
Exactly right. And as you say, it's just a cult-like thing. But, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, it can't get any worse than this guy. Somebody wanted to marry him. There's just something about fame, even if it's really infamy.
And, Royal talked about the jurors kind of being split in terms of what charges they kind of feel like these brothers should be facing. That's one of the fascinating components about this story. You got jurors feeling one way or the other, and then even people working in the district attorney's office. I understand that there are mixed feelings there about whether or not
they certainly are. And from what I understand, some of the former prosecutors were upset that they weren't talked to by the district attorney, George Gascon. We should point out that there was an appellate court hearing on this. And they said, listen, they sort of made the similar argument. We don't care if there was abuse. That's not the point. The point is, were you convinced that you were going to die? And that's the evidence to which the second trial was focused on. And and obviously the juror says there was no, whether it was their perception or not, the fact is that they were eating ice cream, watching TV, and there was no evidence that they were going to murder their own children. So, but again,
And that is true. Hello. Hi, Supreme Reaction. I've been live for way too long. And Colleen is saying, hey, could you come from another country and marry an inmate and become a citizen? I'm sure you could. I'm sure you probably could. But what he's talking about right now is that, the second trial really came down to, were you in fear for your life or not? Like, we're going to limit the abuse where that's your defense, is that you were afraid that they were going to kill you. And there's actually a lot of evidence against that, because in Lyle's cross-examination, okay, Kitty, they said that Kitty had just recently purchased a rifle. This was Lyle and Eric's story. She just got this rifle. They were scared, their lives were going to be taken. It turns out that she bought it a year before this ever even happened. Lyle admits, she bought it like a year ago. Then they say about the fishing trip. The fishing trip was the day before the murders, the night before the murders, right? So this fishing trip is always a big deal, because the boat captain who testified said that they acted like really distant. They stayed away from everyone. It was the boat captain, his girlfriend, and a deckhand, and then the Menendez family. So by all accounts, Lyle and Eric said that they stayed at the front of the boat together, away from everyone, because they were afraid that their father was going to push them overboard and kill them. That he was gonna make them disappear in the ocean, just say it was an accident. Because they thought this fishing trip, they announced the shark fishing trip, and they felt like this is it. This is when they're gonna do us in, blah, 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 blah. But reality is they knew about this fishing trip. It wasn't new. Like, they didn't just plan this fishing trip like right within these couple of days where they said their life was in danger. This was already planned. The boys already knew about it. So a lot of the things like that they claim that, we were so in fear of our lives. I don't think so. I don't feel like they were in fear of their lives. I think they were probably very afraid of what Jose's reaction was going to be with the threats. But I just don't believe that they thought that they were actually going to be killed by their parents. I don't. I think they killed them because of the abuse. But that's not a way to get out of jail, because you can't just kill people because of that. The only way you can truly get out of killing is self-defense in some way, either a perfect self-defense, somebody's coming at you, you're physically defending yourself and kill the other person, gun, whichever way, or an imperfect defense where there is serious reason for you to know that you are in harm's way and this person is going to kill you or they're going to create big time bodily harm. And so you kill them first. That's really the only way. All right, let's see what's going on here.
I think for the
They just keep replaying the same stuff. This is really annoying. Number one, I thought this was going to be live streamed. And it doesn't appear like it's going to be. We're 30 minutes past the time that their hearing should have been heard. Maybe it's being heard right now. But I don't know. They Court TV's not doing this live, which I'm very surprised at. But we'll see. I may have just wasted a couple hours of my life.
I'm always nervous. You know, I feel like I'm going to hear it on the news before I can even hear it from a relative. But at the same time, my brother has a good life for himself, and he's doing well. And so it's a tough question to answer. I do worry about him.
I want to point out that when we conducted that phone interview, the Menendez brothers were separated, different prisons at that time. They are since now together, and right now believed to be appearing before a judge via web link inside of that courtroom as they begin to fight for their freedom, believing new evidence that has always backed up their claim that Beverly Hills detectives didn't believe, that a jury didn't believe, but their firm belief of sexual assault inside of that home on Elm Drive could possibly change their fate and lead to their freedom now 3.5 decades later. And for Lyle Menendez, when we asked him all those years ago, would you ever even consider getting out of prison? He said, quote, "It is too torturous a thought." I'm Robert Kavasek. Let's go back to you.
All right, Robert, thank you for that. Well, only 16 members of the general public were allowed inside. There was a lottery to see who got those seats.
NBC4 John Caddy's Klimak live outside the courthouse. Has been out there since 4 this morning. John, a ton of interest in this case. We're hearing from our folks on our digital team that people are watching from all over the world.
All over the world for this one. This had international attention since this all started in 1989 when those murders were first committed. We've been keeping an eye on the 9th floor here just to see if there's any activity happening because we know that this hearing wasn't supposed to take very long. So we're still waiting to see when it will wrap up to start getting some information. But I did want to point out all that media that Robert's been talking about too. There's a podium that's set up here. All the cameras are going to be pointed at that for whoever comes out to make a statement once this hearing is complete. Now, 16 people, members of the public, they were the ones who were allowed inside to be present during all this, all because of a lottery this morning.
All right, for the last ticket, it will be 6948. Let's go. Got it. Congratulations.
Yeah, the court knew this was going to draw a crowd, and they planned for it. It might be the hottest ticket in town right now. Very LA story, murder, convictions, prison now, the possibility of redemption. Nearly everyone we spoke with had seen either the various documentaries on this case, the Netflix series, all of which ultimately led to the DA's decision to have another look at the case 35 years later. And a lot of talk today about what should happen in that courthouse, same courthouse where the brothers were convicted all those years ago.
Like I grew up with this case, just living in the area, that we really want to see hopefully positive news.
So your positive news would be that they are released is what you're hoping for?
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Let them out.
Let them out.
Let them out.
I believe they should be released soon, whether it be on parole or anything, because whether they get a resentencing or not, they've served a lot of time, and I just believe justice should be served. And there's so many factors that go into this that should be considered in the courtroom today.
You have to look at all the evidence available. And I think in the first trial, when they did that, they had a hung jury. And that was like 30 years ago. It was before we had our current kind of understanding of what that kind of abuse does to people. And in order to get them convicted, they had to take out a lot of evidence to get a jury to agree.
Looking at resentencing and what's possible in a more equitable system. But it is a captivating story.
Back live looking once again at the courthouse here in Van Nuys. We keep an eye on that 9th floor just to see if there's going to be any activity activity. Once the people start to flood out of not only the courtroom itself, but an overflow room that's been set up. We haven't seen anything just yet. Pretty certain, though, that Eric Leonard will be one of the first to come out and get an update as to what happened inside that courtroom. Reporting live outside the Van Nuys Courthouse, I'm John Kenny. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
John, thank you for that. And joining us this morning to walk us through what is going on right now at the hearing today is legal analyst Royal Oakes.
So, Royal, thank you again for being here as we pick your brain about all the scenarios. So with this hearing today, a status hearing is what it's called. It may just be kind of housekeeping. We're saying that we need to really pay close attention to what this judge might be saying in terms of where he might be going, because he knows this case. He's been preparing for this. He knows everybody's watching. We might get some hints about how he really feels.
That's right. The judge, has done his homework. And even though he's probably not going to make a substantive decision and say, all right, brothers, you're released, nonetheless, he may give some guidance to the parties to let them know. And maybe he's speaking to the new DA, Nathan Hochman, because he takes over on December 2. And if there is a December 11 hearing on resentencing, the judge may want to give a signal that the judge is concerned about some issues and wants them to be addressed. So we may get a hint as to whether the judge is leaning one way or another.
So the judge, might be leaning one way or the other, but in terms of the prosecutors, I mean, that's a whole different case because you've got Gascon, who's pushing for resentencing, but then you got a DA-elect, Hochman, who's about to start. And then you had the governor even kind of weighing in on this case already. So politics playing a role in this case.
Right. And I think Gavin Newsom operates under the Bill Clinton rule, which is don't try to solve a problem that may be solved before it gets to your desk, which is why he says, okay, let LA County deal with this because, it may never have to come to clemency. But I have to tell you, you look at the crowd out there, how many people do you think are in line to get a ticket to this courtroom who want them to stay in custody, who want them to stay?
Yeah.
I think 99% of all the interest that you see worldwide and even at the location at the Van Nuys Courthouse is all about letting them out. And does that have a role? Does that have a pressure on the judiciary? It can't not have some pressure on them.
And also the fact that they're all very young. It looks like a lot of the people who are out there, as we talked before, weren't even born when this crime happened.
Correct. It also speaks to, as we talked about earlier, this is a relitigation of a case by TikTok,
right,
and by podcasts and by social media, which has driven this. I mean, if you're on any of these platforms, you get a heavy dose of this all the time. And one could argue that evidence is cherry picked. But the fact is that I think based on the fact there are several avenues that they're seeking, Mark Geragos keeps saying they'll be out by Thanksgiving. That's not happening. They're going to be out by Christmas. I kind of doubt that's going to happen. But he's always projecting this very optimistic idea that it's a fait accompli. They've done their time. We re-examined the evidence. We have sensibilities that we didn't have back then. And I think that's part of his strategy to force the DA's hand.
Real quickly, before we take a break, what are your thoughts about rehabilitation? How do you show rehabilitation when you're talking about a crime this brutal?
Well, I've spent my share of hearings, parole hearings. I've been to Sirhan parole hearing. I've been to Patricia Krenwinkel and Leslie Van Houten, members of the Manson family. And they are very convincing at the parole hearings that they have done everything they can to make them not just better, but also the entire community, incarcerated community, better. And then, of course, you hear the DA who talks about why they were there in the first place. That's sort of the case here. They're very sympathetic characters, and a lot of people believe that there was a miscarriage of justice years ago. But when you hear the prosecution say this is what they did and this is how they acted afterwards, it's going to be tough.
All right, Conan, thank you. We'll stay with NBC4 as we track what happens next. Right now on our NBCLA website, we've got a section dedicated to the Menendez brothers, and we got several crews at the courthouse.
All right, we will continue to bring you the very latest information as soon as we get it. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Enjoy the best deals.
Sorry, guys. I've just been live way longer than I anticipated. And I got to get my laundry in. But I wanted to talk about something Leslie Aberson said. With as much as she fought for these brothers, right? Especially Eric, because she was Eric's attorney throughout the first trial. But is hard in the sauce. And Leslie Aberson is a hell of a lawyer. I always say that. But I thought her statement to Netflix, the documentary that was done with Lyle and Eric and Pam, the prosecutor, she was on. There was quite a few people on there. But Leslie Aberson declined to take part, and she just gave a statement. And this was her statement. 30 years is a long time. I'd like to leave the past in the past. No amount of media nor teenage petitions will alter the fate of these clients. Only the court can do that, and they have ruled. Very solemn statement. And I found it interesting, like she just has no hope that they would get out. Now, this was in 2013 that she made this statement while they were doing this documentary. So, TMZ, I've said this in previous live streams, but TMZ ran up on her at a gas station. Leslie's older, she's 80 some years old now. And she looks like an 80-year-old woman. She still moves about, though. She's a tiny little short thing. But they ran up on her at a gas station. And she was like, nope, not giving any comment about clients, not doing it. She refuses any comments about it. And I just find that interesting. It's like she's just kind of done. You would just think something that she poured so much time and effort in. Like when the trials were done, she was like, I don't even remember what life is anymore. My life has been this trial for years at this point. And, she said she just might just do nothing. Just, So I think it took a lot out of her. But I would still have some sort of, maybe she's just quietly watching somewhere, I'm sure. I'm sure she has to want to know something, right? I think I would want to know. If I put that much time and energy and years of my life into. But I thought her comment was interesting. She would like to leave the past in the past. So, interesting. We'll see what's going on now.
Not change, but the circumstances have. Let's take you back a little bit. Special Counsel Jack Smith has.
They're not even showing the damn trial. We're on Trump right now. I don't like to do politics on this channel. People get too crazy and wild over politics. Everybody wants everybody to listen to everybody's viewpoint and agree with them, and it just never works. And the debating of it, I've debated politics forever. It just pisses me off at the end of the day, and I just don't like doing it anymore. So I don't. But yeah, this live stream is absolutely ridiculous. Almost 3 hours just waiting for them to come out and give like a 2-sentence something. Oh, let's read this. So I'm looking at this article. Pam, the prosecutor in the first trial. Okay. This woman is still bitter to this day. If you guys have watched the documentary on Netflix, she is still bitter to this day. But I've watched Pam through 2 different lenses. I watched her as, holy crap, you are the most bitter woman ever. And then I've watched her through the lens of someone that definitely believes that they're liars and they're murderers and is pissed off that they were not given a sentence when she tried them. And I see her in different ways. I don't know. She is wild, though. But this is what she said. The interviewer asked her what she thought of Leslie Aberson. Okay. And she said, if I told you guys what I thought of Leslie Aberson, she was like, well, she lost all her money. Like she's broke now. She was like, so I don't want to lose my house. So she took these jabs, and I don't know why she hates Leslie Aberson so much. because she didn't lose to her, but she didn't win against her either. But she clearly hates this woman. So this article says, is Leslie Aberson broke? And it says one of the digs Pamela makes at Leslie in the documentary is a suggestion that Leslie is now broke. Oh, she doesn't suggest it. She says it. But anyway, she says, if I told you I should have just read this. If I told you what I really thought of Leslie Aberson, I would be sued because she, I think, has lost all her money and I'm not giving up my house. These claims appear to be unfounded. Leslie is currently retired and living outside the public eye. So they're unfounded? What's Pam? Pam's over here making digs. Do you guys know what Pam the prosecutor looks like? I should take a picture off my TV and just show you guys like a still of her if you haven't seen the documentary. Like you can look at the court case and see a young Pam, a young prosecutor Pam. But seeing Pam today, I think she's aged well, I guess. She's much older. But she is a feisty one, boy. Like, good gracious. And again, I just want to know why she hates Leslie Aberson that much. Like, is it that personal to you that you didn't get an outright win against her? I mean, I would think that, and then she said, that woman, Pam the prosecutor, okay, said some wild stuff. This one story, every time, like I've watched it a couple times, like 3 times or 3 times. I've put it on and fallen asleep to it different times. But anyway, she was like, oh yeah, she was like laughing when she was saying this. She's like, me and the bailiffs would play this game, at like if we had a gun with 2 bullets in it, who would we shoot? She was like, and the bailiffs would always pick the brothers. She was like, but I picked Leslie and said that I would shoot her twice to make sure she's dead. And she's laughing, saying this, like, what? I mean, yeah, that you guys got to watch that documentary so we can just be on the same page. Let's see if these people are back to what they should be reporting on. Yes, Colleen girl, I am not kidding. She really said that and was laughing. She thought that was funny and was happy to share it. I mean, I was just like, wow, you are really a piece of work. You got booted? Oh, bad Wi-Fi. Tamir, I have been fighting with Wi-Fi for months. I think I finally sorted it now. I think I finally got it right. I got a booster and all, I think it's good now. So, but I'm glad you're back. I wish these people would come on. I mean, my cat, he has not stopped grabbing at my blanket. He's just hanging from my blanket right now. Oh yeah, seems like I got it sorted out. I know. Thank God. It was so annoying. But this laptop, I mean, I need a new webcam, all that stuff. So Tyler, I'm pretty sure that he's getting me a new laptop for Christmas and a webcam. I really need new equipment, but getting that, I'll be so happy. I will be so happy. This cat, oh my gosh. Oliver, be 5 foot above. I'm not even singing that song right. Oliver, come on. He's gonna rip my blanket. Look, I'm just gonna let him do it. He really wants to rip my blanket off. These people got 87 ads. Good gracious. And how long do you think this press conference is going to be? They're going to come out and just say, like, a couple things. It's been an hour. So, I mean, somebody should be coming outside saying something.
Walking into the courthouse in Van Nuys this morning. Now, that hearing, we understand, has not yet started, but our reporter in the courtroom tells us it is expected to start very soon.
What?
We're going to go back to NBC4's Robert Kovacic, who continues our coverage outside the courthouse. And as Robert.
It hasn't started yet. Have they lost their mind?
Here, Mark Garagos is the high-profiled attorney who has handled many different cases before, including Scott Peterson and most recently the Jussie Smollett case. So when Mark Garagos talked to us, he said he has been in frequent touch with the Menendez brothers. Again, he said they're riding a roller coaster of emotions, and he is asking them to keep their expectations in check. When it comes to what is happening inside, we do believe it may be getting underway because we are losing communication with our team inside because they're asking for cell phones to be turned off. Expected to be a very quick hearing. Mark Garagos told us the brothers will be there. He's expecting that the brothers will have a chance to speak about what we don't know. It may be just a yes and no formality. But again, appearing via web link because Garagos said he didn't want to put them through this, bringing them to court right now at this point for what is a status conference. But it is key today because if the Menendez brothers are going to pursue any path to freedom, it is going to start right here. You also have to remember, we talk a lot about what they're saying happened inside of that home on Elm Drive, but there are Menendez family members who are not buying it. And that includes Milton Anderson. He is the brother of Kitty Menendez, who has come out and said that sexual assault didn't happen as far as he was concerned, that he believes the motive was in fact greed. And then Milton Anderson went on to say, even if it was sexual assault inside of that home, what they did should not be forgiven, meaning they should not be able to get out of prison. Les Zeller, who is the, the detective for Beverly Hills Police Department who investigated the crime scene. We spoke with him extensively years ago. Les Zeller is no longer with us, but Zeller said at that point, and I'm quoting here, it was the most horrific crime scene that he had ever seen in his life. Talking about evidence was found outside in the front yard. And so we begin to talk about a possible path to freedom.
All right, guys. This is just, they haven't even started yet. So I'm going to stop this stream here. I will say on that note where he said, you know, it's the most horrific crime scene. Pam, the prosecutor, she said that, well, she said it in court. No, she said it on the documentary. But she said that when the detectives went into the house, that I think it was Jose's, that his brain just fell out like in front of them. So, like, talk about a true crime scene, you know. All right, I'm gonna end this stream. I'm gonna go do whatever. I've been sitting here for 3 hours, so if it comes back on and I can hop back on, then I'll do that. But it'll probably be after, and then we could talk about whatever it was. Yes, Tamara, brutal. So, all right, I'll see you guys in a little while, I guess. Bye for now.